Hello, everybody. Welcome on the French Looking True, episode 3, with the panel to talking about the Zodiac. Today we are with Ned Dehan, Mr. Drew Beeson, Ross, Geraci, Mr. Richard Grinnell, and we are waiting for Druzer, Mr. Andrew Gray. So here we go. Episode 3. Let's start with, let's say, Mr. Beeson. Drew, go ahead.
You want to just pick up where we were? Because, before we started, I was a little behind on the Richard Hoffman thing and his grandson coming out with, another, we wanted to get that out of the way. So I was a little behind. So obviously Richard knows and Ned probably knows as well. What is the timeline on Hoffman, of course, because we know that he rode in the ambulance with Darlene Ferrin and he made that bizarre comment, and this is the Zodiac speaking about her bra as she was breathing, so that really put him on the map, and it's not like we he's been discussed for years and years on the forums, and of course Mike Migeot said the name Richard came up when the car pulled up behind them at Blue Rock Springs Park. But what was the timeline, Richard? I know you know well of when we know that Hoffman is at Kaiser Hospital still with Darlene, and then she's pronounced dead. Does he really have any real time to go make the phone call from Tuolumne and Springs or not?
No. He's in the ambulance. He arrives at the hospital, Kaiser Hospital, at 12:38, and the phone call comes in at 12:40. He actually goes into the hospital and tries to carry on interviewing Michael Migeot. So the phone booth is 2.2 miles away, and he's in the hospital absent of a vehicle and has to get there in 2 minutes for 2.2 miles, which is frankly impossible. But this story has done the rounds before. It's done it several times
for years,
and it's nothing new, and it's quite frankly a no-goer.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I know that's the biggest Achilles heel for Hoffman. I mean, he's a strange guy. Mike Migeot did say the name Richard in this, the Zodiac speaking.
Yeah.
I know there was some confusion about whether or not Hoffman had pulled up on a motorcycle or what they just say is a unit. But as I understand, he was in a patrol car, not a motorcycle, right?
Yeah, in a car. Yeah.
He was in Unit 119, I believe.
Which is a patrol car, as we know, right? And not a motorcycle.
And then he bumped into another Unit 130. I think Andy Nicolidis was in that vehicle and got pulled up, that young lad. Mm-hmm. So I believe he was in a vehicle which clearly wasn't at the hospital with him. So another claim, such as he spells until incorrectly, just like the Zodiac, is nothing. I mean, lots of people do that. I've seen it multiple times. So there's very little to connect. And if you're going to go down the Nebraska line, which is even worse, we haven't really got a lot going for Richard Hoffman.
Yeah, there's just nothing new under the sun. It's not like the grandson showed up with the hood that can be dated to 1969 or anything compelling. Nice. I've seen his handwriting samples, which are all, he wrote a lot of police reports. They're all caps. So, of course, Zodiac wrote in lowercase, but there's just not a whole lot there for Hoffman.
No.
Well, to jump in on this for a second, I mean, the Richard Hoffman theory gets shared in a couple ways because people encounter these difficulties with the timeline. So this expands into the policeman thrill kill club theory that, all right, there was a group of officers, and even if Hoffman was the shooter, then somebody else could have made the phone call, and you would have different people in different places. And the problem with that is that so much of it is based on conjecture and speculation, and then it's almost as if the Hoffman timeline doesn't work. So you have to start making assumptions. Like, it's just the same way, you would just be accusing any police officer of committing the Stein murder or Lake Berryessa, but they have no connections to the other crime scenes. So you start making assumptions. And that's the biggest problem that JFOI is going to encounter. And he got a lot
he doesn't know the case. Admittedly, he doesn't know the case very well. He's
Drew, this is what he said. He spent 13 hours one night, going down the rabbit hole, just kind of staying up all night reading about Richard Hoffman. I hope he was listening to Black Box Online Radio. And, he just kind of took it all in. He made these TikTok videos over a span of 9 days, and he got tens of millions of views. I mean, that's something, good for him, I guess. But 9 days on the internet, not enough.
The thing is, he knows very little about the case, but so do the people who are watching his YouTube video. So he doesn't have to deal in facts to convince a lot of people on a few little details. So
the short attention span TikTok crowd.
Yeah. 13 hours is nothing. That's a regular, weekend for Grinnell. How many times has he done that on every single article he's ever written? So,
that's so true. It would take a lifetime to read Richard's website.
You need to. Here's where J-Foy needs to go: ZodiacCiphers.com. Go pop over there and get started
and go front to back.
Yeah,
but it's the hard. But the frustrating thing is it's other than the phone call. Of course, I saw people trying to make the argument. Well, maybe the clocks weren't synced. Maybe the clock at the hospital was different than when the phone call came in. But I think Tom said, or something along those lines, that before the caller talked to Nancy Slover, he talked to someone else. There's Druzer. Maybe he might know that. Like,
hello, Druzer.
Welcome.
Hi, Druzer.
Yeah, I don't like the whole J-Foy thing. And again, like Richard said, this isn't even the first time the suspect has even come up. I mean, multiple mistakes. Great. You got a lot of views on TikTok. That's great. I say he takes up Kenneth Main's challenge, which is, why don't you go give that DNA and see if it links to Sherry, like Gary Francis' post got shut down there, because the problem with his video is he goes, hey, here's the thing. There's Michael Majot or whatever his name, and then there's a RH on the desktop home in Riverside. It's like,
oh God, what a stretch.
What are you talking about, man? Like that is the complete non-starter. Like Hoffman, he was like a Bay Area local, right? So is there anything putting him in Riverside in 66? And if
Nebraska,
there's that. If Foy even thought that there was a chance, then he would hit Mains up right away, And even still, even if it got shot down for Sherry, it wouldn't mean he's not the Zodiac. But I bet you Gary Francis post DNA doesn't match anything, any of the forensics from the canonicals. So
good. Hey, Jerome, did you get those slides I sent you?
Yes, those were great. That's what we were talking about a little bit before, and the timeline of the phone call. But maybe when the Zodiac called in from Tuolumne and Springs, who answered the phone? I mean, was it somebody before Nancy Slover?
Yes.
And how long did that go on? Or do you know?
I don't think we can know. Probably a moment or two, and then it was transferred. Does that sound right, Richard?
Well, according to the text, it'll probably last about 20, 30 seconds. I know the operator was called Betty Main.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying. Oh, Mrs. Johnson.
Oh, I'm on.
So I think Mrs. Johnson put the call, didn't she? Or Mrs. Johnson.
It's not even blowing again.
Yeah, it was Johnson and Main. I wasn't sure who was the operator and who was her supervisor.
The supervisor was Betty Main, I think.
Right. Okay. So it was patched through, and but she illegally stayed on the line.
Well, maybe.
And then, I thought she said so, but she wasn't allowed to speak to the press.
No, she declined. She stopped Miss Johnson from speaking to the press, didn't she?
Oh, okay.
I think. Looking at the time he spent reading out that message, it couldn't have taken much more than 20 seconds. I wouldn't have thought. So, I mean, we know phone calls can't be traced. When we had the Jim Dunbar show, they were on about 15 minutes, weren't they?
Yeah.
But this was traced because I think she kept the line open, didn't she?
Yeah.
Something like this. I don't know how it worked. Maybe because he rang the operator and was patched through. I don't know. We've been trying to get to the bottom of this for a long time.
At any rate, it's a theory developed by people who have barely read the reports, being responded to by people who will never read the reports, and won't be interested next week.
Good. Well said.
That's
And one thing to jump in on that for a second is some people think that people are just being salty when someone is coming forward with videos who isn't regularly talking about the Zodiac online, that, oh, you guys are just putting him down because he's not like you. He doesn't talk about this every week. But in all seriousness, sometimes these popular suspects come along and they just don't have a lot of substance. And, you know, if it were just filled with like strong pieces of facts and information and compelling evidence and reasons, I don't think any of us would be trying to knock anybody's research or work. It's just someone has made a reasonably flimsy case. It's somewhat of a flimsy case about Richard Hoffman, and then you're just like pointing out all of the errors, and it's just being honest. And that's what I think everybody on this panel is doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you said, in all seriousness, this is a goddamn murder case. Shut up.
Yeah, we are
if you're
talking
not going to actually read the reports, shut up.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Francis' post had his day as well, right? Fox News and Newsmax posted everywhere that Zodiac was solved, even though the FBI tweeted right after saying it's an unsolved cold case. And like, that's my problem when these announcements come along. It hits the news wire, it gets like reposted everywhere. And then when the corrections come out, like in the case of Maine saying, you know, Gary Francis doesn't match Sherry's killer, much less, you know, headlines about that, and much less headlines about the FBI saying, you know, it hasn't been solved. But Fox News totally missed that fact, you know. It's wild.
But Ross, Ken Main's waiting 2 years to come forward with that DNA evidence. I don't know if he ever said this before. I think he, by his own admission, he was being quiet by saying that the DNA of Gary Francis Post didn't match the Bates killer, as well as Ted Kaczynski. He said Ted Kaczynski's DNA was one he tested as well that also didn't match. And I mean, I wish he would have just said something sooner about that back when the story was fresh in people's minds, or when Dale Julian's book Catching Zodiac came out.
Yeah,
I mean, he waited at least 2 years.
He is crazy, Ken Maines. He wasn't the only one in the testing room there. And I have it from pretty darn good authority that all of the blood on Sherry's pants was hers, and they got nothing off of the watch.
Okay, so
I have no idea how he could make this YTSR claim. Like, that simply didn't happen. And because he didn't go into details, like he didn't say that the match and the alleged sample from the pants matched. So obviously it is not confirmed to be from the killer. And I don't know.
So do they even have a good DNA sample?
No. I don't even think they have the mitochondrial stuff from back in the day.
So you not even whatever was in the webbing of her hand or whatever that was, or the hair
that was
or
the
something.
Hair and the skin sample.
I think I heard that they have 1 of 4 hairs left. And again, these are rootless hairs. And if they had anything off of any of the correspondences, I'm certain that even Riverside PD would have put that in their bizarre press release. Instead of
bizarre and poorly written.
Instead of taking the DNA from the 2016 letter they got and comparing it to any sample they may have had, they instead spent 4 years doing genealogical research to track down this guy, and evidently just took his say-so on his involvement.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think.
But was it that he was too young though? The guy that forged the letters in the Bates case.
They described him as a young teenager. They said he was a young teenager at the time, and without more specific information, it's hard to weigh in on that. Like, I don't think the Bates killer needed to weigh more than 150 pounds. So I really don't know.
So he still could have been a Bates killer, just not Zodiac.
If they say he couldn't have been the killer, then maybe he was 12. I don't know.
Yeah. So now,
can we jump in on one thing? I mean, just like,
yeah, sure.
Ken Maines released a video on Sherry Jo Bates, and his whole stance during the whole video was that they had the hair on the webbing of her hand from someone who wasn't Sherry Jo Bates that was in the blood, as Drew said. That was his, like, everything. He's like, that's why we should not look at Bob Barnett as a suspect because the hair didn't match when they did DNA testing on that. Now, in 2024, he's just like, okay, the DNA that he has for available has nothing to do with that hair. It's from the pants and the watch wristband that was found near her body. So, like, which one is it? Which are the strong pieces of evidence? And as Druzer said, I was shocked as well, not going into any detail. He didn't even state if the DNA matched the wristband and the pants. I'm like, well, now wait a second. If there is that type of match from an unknown male, all right, maybe that is the killer, but why hold this stuff back? I mean, he openly says that he's not really pursuing Zodiac that much. Just put it out there and move on with your life. You know what I mean?
Very weird. I mean, that's strange that he makes these claims that, like further. Gary Post. So he said that Gary Francis Post DNA was tested against Bates, or he implied that?
Against Bates' killer. That's what he said. He said the case breakers wanted him to keep quiet about the fact that GFP's sample didn't match Sherry's killer. But going back to you, Druzer, so you don't think Maines has Sherry's killer DNA sample at all?
No, I don't. And now I'm questioning other things that he delivered in his video, and I sort of took him at his word because he's seen the physical files that we have not, and he says that Cleophas Martin, the caretaker who found Sherry's body, said that his shoes were an exact match for the prints found at the scene. Same kind of shoe, same size of shoe. Now I guess I don't believe that anymore.
See, I never saw any verification for that either. He was the first one to ever come out with that one. I think I don't know, one of our shows I think we were doing a while back. And I never saw that either until he made that announcement. So I don't know. I mean, he needs to do another video with maybe some more clarification if it's possible for him. But
and maybe open up the comments section if he'd like to actually.
That was an interesting choice. That was
there's no way they there's no way they tested Gary Post's DNA. There's no way. I mean, it degrades. Even if they have a sample, it would stun me that such a terrible. I mean, if anything, you'd want to test the Zodiac DNA they got off the 78 letter against what they would have for Bates, is what I always thought. Like see if because if the 78 letter lined up to Bates, well, then we know Bates is Zodiac at least, and we're getting somewhere.
Yep.
Like, why would they do such a test? Like, after having zero evidence presented.
Yeah,
like, I'm not saying that Post is eliminated as a suspect. He is exactly as viable as any 35-year-old Californian male.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't they test Gary Post against the hair samples that we know they've got and check the DNA?
At least get a mitochondrial link before they do anything further.
And you spoke of there was 4 hairs originally. I don't know how many there are now, but the point is, like nuclear DNA, they don't have to keep retesting it. They do a printout of it, so that should be stored.
Yeah,
you don't have to worry. What if you've got a mitochondrial sort of bar chart of one of the hairs? Why do you have to keep retesting them over and over again?
Yeah, it would be sad if we lost the last sample because they used it for Gary Francis Post.
Exactly.
But I don't know.
Make a record of it. You don't need to keep using the hairs. You just need to use one. Record it, get details from it, and that's it done. Unless you lose it, like they have a habit of losing stuff these days, don't they? So, in those days.
I mean, let's just say Maines is right on what he reported on YouTube, right? Which is that Gary Francis is out for Sherry's killer, assuming he has that sample of Sherry's killer's DNA, which is what he said, just taking him at his word, Druzer. I think this is an important lesson for new people to the case that come in and announce these Richard Hoffman or Gary Francis Post suspects. You know, if you already get shot down at Riverside, not that changes anything for the canonicals, because most of us don't really think it's probably the same killer. But, you know, I think when people watch the movie and read the book, they think, oh, what's this Riverside thing? Sherry's a Zodiac victim. And they just go too hard on the Riverside angle, you know, like, whereas if you could have, tested latent prints or whatever evidence supposedly exists, like Drew said, DNA sample from 78 on the canonical crimes, if you're trying to prove the Zodiac, why don't you start there instead of starting with Sherry? You know, just the whole thing makes no sense, you know, other than headline stuff, as we said, you know. Like,
Yeah, you know they haven't found the Zodiac Killer when it appears on mainstream media.
Exactly.
Especially when it's a repeat suspect, as Grinnell said.
Yeah.
It's not even anything new.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is
yeah,
a follow-up
but
for
going back-
Ross and Druzer. I mean, I would just like to ask you guys real fast. What's this thing about the boot print at the Bates murder scene matched the caretaker? Now, was the insinuation that he was the killer, or that it's just like just contaminated the crime scene? He's just the guy that found the body, and that's why his footprint was there. What's the claim?
The claim would I mean, obviously they looked into Martin because he found the body
First on the
Of
scene.
course.
but I guess the implication would just be that it's not evidence, despite all the documents describing it as evidence.
Yeah.
So
And-
Haynes knows, and no one else
Yeah,
is in
right.
the loop on this, I guess.
Well, you know,
Once again,
somebody
yeah.
has to find the body. We should point out that there was a guy named Richard Hoffman who was the responding officer to Blue Rock Springs. And, I mean, countless people get pulled in this. Sometimes he is the killer, though. Look at Stephen Crawford in the Arliss Perry murder. Sometimes the guy who finds the body actually is the killer.
Sometimes,
But,
but I think
this
in
just
these
means that-
situations,
Go ahead.
It's just, well, you know that Cleophas Martin works there. He's like, he starts his shift at 6 a.m. or whatever, right? So the most likely footprints to be around the area, because that's his job, are him. Same thing
Absolutely.
with, you know, Richard Hoffman or any of these cases. Like, yeah, sure. Once in a while, as Ned said, it does line up. You know, you got the leech bear situation. You got other situations where you could have a plausible suspect. But in this situation, I assume Cleophas Martin's, you know, comings and goings are well documented because that's his job. Obviously, most of Hoffman's actions from that timeline are documented. So you essentially have his movements, at least more so than we would have from a random suspect. The other problem with Hoffman is this. You know, I know Mike had the flashlight in his face before he got shot multiple times, but he did see a profile. He did see the shape of a face. You would think if Hoffman shows up there interviewing him shortly after, like what people say about the Hartnell land situation, that he would say, hey,
Yeah.
the person I saw's kind of profile outline matched Hoffman. You know, he saw enough of him that if the dude was questioning him all night long for the next 48 hours, something would trigger his memory. You know, I saw a profile image of him. It was similar to that guy. It would have came up. The fact that Majot never says anything leads to show you that Hoffman didn't really have that similarities to whoever he saw. Now, I know it wasn't perfect, but, you know, it was enough, you know, to eliminate, you know, so.
Yeah, Majot got a good enough look that he weighed in on whether the guy had a beard or not, whether he had glasses or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think he got at least a general impression.
Body type said beefy build.
Yep. Heavier dude. So I haven't even seen that many pictures of Hoffman, but he's what, average size, relatively skinny, less stocky.
I don't know if I've seen a whole full picture of him.
He seems
No,
like a
me
bigger
neither.
guy, but it's just absurd.
Do you find it? Do you find it a bit suspicious, Michael Majot's description, bearing in mind he said he only saw a side profile of the killer? It was dark. He couldn't have saw him for more than a split second. And yet he's got the weight right, and he's only seeing the top half of his body. He's got weight pinned down, curly hair, no glasses, etc. Height. I mean, it sounds, bearing in mind what we know about Michael Majot, this seems a bit like he's trying to please them and give a description. So I don't.
And of course, he picked Arthur Lee Allen out of a lineup, as we know, famously.
Yeah. Well, he said several times in the reports that he did not get a good look. He wanted to stress that he did not get a good look.
Yeah.
And then I think he did his best to help find the killer of his dear friend.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like Brunel said, he's saying curly this and curly that, beefy. I'm just saying, does any of that stuff match Hoffman? Because if they're literally looking at that description and look over at the first responder, like Ned was saying, and he happens to match, you know, curly brown hair or whatever the hell he said, beefy face, glasses, even just a few things that we have, you know, I think it would have come together relatively quickly, and it obviously didn't, you know.
What do you
Okay,
guys
but
think
to
about
answer Richard's question, well, just Richard asked that question real fast about what do we make of Mike Mageau's testimony? I have never liked it. This might even be like another problem with evidence. Mike Mageau said the guy was 5 feet 8 inches tall on the shorter side, maybe just a head above the car. But I'm 5 foot 8, and if I'm standing next to a sedan, and like I am well above a head above the car. I mean, like the car might come up almost to my shoulder, but not quite. So that just throws it off all completely. I mean, if his head was just above the car, he'd probably be about 5'4", 5'5". I think that Mike just didn't really know what he was saying when he said that.
Because he was
Nothing
sitting.
against Mike. I mean, he was shot in the face, and he wasn't trying to pay attention. But that's just my final note.
Yeah, I agree.
I think all we
What
can
do you guys think about the fact?
You go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, real quick. I want to see anybody can weigh in, but what do you think about the fact that the shooter at Blue Rock Springs Park walked over to Mike's side of the car and not Darlene's? Because assuming if it's somebody, maybe Hoffman or whoever the suspect is, would go, if they knew Darlene's car, they may have gone straight to Darlene, or is it just a case of I'm mad at the guy dating the girl I'm dating, and that's why he walks from his driver's side over to Mike's side and shoots from there?
I think that decision
always wondered about that.
is pretty strong suggestion that the Zodiac was also in the car that had arrived and left 5 minutes earlier and was acting suspicious, like just watching them. Otherwise,
that's all I can guess too. I mean, that's all I can guess too, because it would be like, the killer got a view of the car and he saw that the guy was sitting in the passenger seat, so start shooting on the passenger side first. But that's a guess on my part. I fully admit it.
That's how Faraday is targeted, right? He comes up and shoots David first, so similar type.
I like Richard's hot take on this, that the target was the first. I say target not as in they followed him there, but when he arrived there, that the first target was Darlene, so that she couldn't drive away.
Yeah, I mean, that makes some sense, but going to what Drew was saying, like the whole Darlene is the real target, conspiracy theory. It doesn't really make much sense to walk up and start shooting across the passenger side, seat, as opposed to, like Drew was saying, just walking straight up to the driver, like if it was really some personal connection that, you know what I mean? Because now it just doesn't make any sense.
It's possible that he got a good enough look to notice that the passenger side window was down.
Good point.
Yeah, I could see that.
Well, the ignition was on, the handbrake was off, it was ready to go, the engine was on, and if you look at the autopsy, she's got 4 entry wounds and 4 exit wounds through 4 through her wrists, both. In other words, the bullet went into her right arm, out the right arm, out the right wrist, into the left wrist, out the left wrist, and the other one entered just about on her elbow and entered into her other arm and went through. So we had 2 bullets doing 4 entry and 4 exit wounds. That's the idea behind her having her hands on that steering wheel ready to go. And the killer comes into the to the window, and his biggest threat is her driving away. And I think that's why she was targeted first. But the autopsy seems to back that up.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
I mean, also because Betty Lou apparently ran or whatever, so you know what I mean? That could have been an influence,
It doesn't seem like the police came to that decision or to that conclusion. And Zodiac implies that Mike was shot first. But I still like the theory, and I think that's probably why Michaud was able to escape to the back seat. I think if this stranger targeted him first, I think he's a goner.
But the strange thing is, Zodiac leaned into that and would have had his face would have been visible at that point to Michael Mageau. If we assume he got a good look at him when he was outside, when he leant in to put the gun over the back, over the front seats into the back, he obviously was looking at him at that point. So that doesn't help with weight and height and everything else. But how can he claim he only got a side profile if he's leant in and starts firing him on the back seat.
I mean, just a totally random guess without knowing the reports, how Druzer and Richard know him. I don't know if he's necessarily looking at the direction that's being fired while he's being shot. He's probably just looking straight up. And you know what I mean? What doesn't make any sense to me is that when he's in the back seat and Zodiac walks away and comes back and shoots him again, that he doesn't get more of a look between any of those back. I mean, I know it's literally seconds, but I would assume, like Richard was saying, he would got more of a look in between when he turns around and comes back again. And then obviously Mike still doesn't die. So, you know, Zodiac is either panicking or he's a bad shot, but it doesn't really make sense why he can't finish the job after two, you know, Darlene.
I think it's
Mike,
both.
Darlene, and then walking back, you know, back to Mike a second time.
I think he was nervous. He didn't know what he was doing. And also he was a bad shot.
Yeah, and I think he was aware of how close he came at Lake Herman Road to a real witness sighting. He was aware of the traffic. He was certainly aware of the newspaper articles that laid some of that out. And I think it explains why he came into Blue Rock Springs first, had a look, and then went to make sure that there was no one else coming on either direction of the one road he had to escape.
But why would he drive away? Why would he drive away and return and do exactly the same thing? He's back in the same position as he would have been if he'd shot the first time.
Because he wanted to make sure that the coast was clear?
But then by the time he's got back, the coast could fill up again.
That's
Absolutely. True. 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes, you know, like we're just talking about like a passing car or something like that. And
yeah, I mentioned it in relation to the idea of his haste when he's doing the initial firing, and then when he comes back and seems to be in a hurry because he's trying to finish them off because obviously they're not dead, and he doesn't get the job done.
Yeah.
What I think that really shows, though, is just that he's not even like putting in a very strong effort to kill the victims. It's like he wants to commit this crime so he can make the phone call, so he can write the letters. And the evidence for this is he could have walked up and just shot Mike Mageau like in the head and shot Darlene in the head. And, you know, he's just kind of spraying bullets like crazy. And it really looks like someone who has no idea what they're doing. So all this stuff about the Zodiac being an expert marksman, I think it's gone over and done.
No.
Yeah, and perhaps Zodiac gives away the shooting order with that line, because he says that he tried to shoot Mike in the head, but Mike got into the back seat, which spoiled his aim. There's no way that the gun is pointed at Michael and Michael makes it into the back seat before he can fire. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the spoiling the aim thing, because from front to the back seat is only like 2 feet, and you're talking about a guy, like Richard said, that's standing right outside the window. So, like, moving your hand like from that to that spoiled your aim. And then he didn't in the letter. He literally said, I sprayed him like a fire hose, you know, like what Ned was just saying, you know. So it doesn't sound very calculated, you know.
Not at all.
And he said the first shots I fired at the boy. He didn't say the first shots he fired that night.
Well, that's true. That's true too.
Good point. Good point. And then, what was I gonna say about that? Like, also, like Faraday headshot, execution shot, Stein headshot, execution shot. So, like Ned said, totally inconsistent to sitting behind or standing or sitting behind those guys, shooting them directly in the head for the kill shot, as opposed to like, I literally think what you guys were saying might be true. While he was shooting Mageau, or when he walked back, he may have literally been watching the road, thinking like there's just going to be a passerby at any moment. And that might even explain some of the even, you know, more random bad aim, you know, like he's literally shooting, but literally not looking at what he's shooting at. You know what I mean? Just a theory. But
I mean,
there has to be some explanation. You know?
There's no way he should miss Michael Mageau. As Michael Mageau is looking for his identification, all he has to do is push the gun forward into his face and shoot him.
No explanation for it.
And maybe if he shot Darlene Ferrin first, it gives him that split instant where he starts moving, and that spoils his aim when he aims at Michael Mageau. That's the only reason I can think. Unless, like you said, he just doesn't care about killing people and he's just aiming randomly into the car.
Yeah, as long as the dude
I do think
down.
that.
Good.
But I also think that it's like what we were kind of touching on a little bit with Lake Herman Road about how he was trying to perhaps keep order at Lake Herman Road, and what he didn't account of is that the victims aren't just going to sit there. And as I said in the last panel episode, I think it was Betty Lou who was the one who had like the flight instincts. It's trying to run away. So this time at Blue Rock Springs, he's thinking, all right, I'm going to shoot the victims in the car. No one's going to get out. No one's going to run. And then he's just kind of focused on keeping them in the vehicle and in one place. But in doing so, he ended up being a mess. I mean, like, you know, Richard, we think about this all the time. It would have been so easy for the Zodiac to murder both of the victims, but instead he's just like, oh crap, you know, what do I do? And I mean, the Zodiac, by his own admission, also said he was nervous during the Lake Berryessa stabbing. He's probably just being like really hot-headed and on edge at that point, and it's just kind of
Brian
firing.
said he was nervous at Lake Berryessa.
That's what I was going to bring up. That's what I was going to bring up.
Exactly.
Because, you know, Mike jumps in the back, turns around, walk back. Also, we're talking about the 9mm upgrade here.
Yeah. So was it? What is the deal with the gun? Was
Yes.
it a Browning high power? It shoots a 9mm Luger projectile. So what was the thing with the gun? Because he said Zodiac said 9mm Luger, and then later they said it was a Browning high power, which that is a 9mm, right? Or what was the distinction with the gun?
There is a list with about 8 different guns on it that I found. I think it's on my website.
Yeah, they couldn't nail it down precisely.
No, they couldn't. I mean, it's taken that it's a Luger, but I've seen multiple weapons mentioned.
Yeah.
I always saw Browning high power, but I didn't know if they had landed on that, you know, a Browning high power, which is, I guess
That's their best guess, but I don't
9mm.
I don't know how many weapons they had at their disposal to actually make the testing. After a while, I think they probably just ran out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily a Luger just because Zodiac says it's a Luger. Also, isn't the Luger notorious for jamming? You know, if it's because it's basically an antique, you know what I mean? So,
I just can't see
All
him
9mm, right?
using an antique gun. It just
yeah,
Maybe,
right.
yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at, you know, or if it is, it's another like, you know, kind of insinuation to his, you know, white nationalist beliefs. You know, if he's really that invested in the Luger, you know what I mean? I don't know if you
I
guys.
don't know, Ross. Is that satire about, you know, being like the white nationalist? Because I know some people build their entire cases on that. Oh yes, Dory and the Minutemen, and
Dover, yeah, Minutemen.
No, I mean, I don't build my entire case on that, but it would with the story he makes up about the witness at the phone call, it would not surprise me if Zodiac was some sort of right-wing racist at all. That's all.
a lot of serial killers are because
shabbily
they
dressed
just
Negro
destroy.
man, or
Yeah.
That's
he never used his spotlight to give away anything about his politics, and
No.
I don't think it was out of any kind of fear. I think he just thought about nothing but himself.
it's more the movies
It's all
thing.
about
Like
him.
if the shock corridor thing lines up, Ned, you know, that's obviously like a KKK reference with the crosshair logo on it. I also started another one of those Most Dangerous Game adaptations, the Woman Hunt with Sig.
I don't know
Haig,
that one.
It
Never heard
actually
of it.
has like a crosshair, like basically like a Zodiac-esque crosshair logo, but without the lines coming outside of the circle in the beginning. But this is 72, 73, so it's, you know, 3-4 years late, but like following all the names at the beginning of the credits, like that's as far as I got. So I don't know if that was some veiled symbolic thing. I don't know if you guys know this, Jerome. This is in the did I miss it? There's a question about Klingel, Robert Smith. Wasn't Klingel cleared by
let's
DNA?
talk. I'd love to talk Klingel if you guys.
I know
love talking
Rich
about
knows
Klingel
this
for some
stuff good, but did they have Klingel's DNA? I don't know if you guys,
They
know
got it from
that.
they got it from his waist, but how they can prove that was not from another a male person who visited his home and deposited that in the waist. They didn't get it directly from Klingel, from what I believe. That's not what it said in the report. They got it from his waist. Well, that could have been anybody. That could have been a friend that visited the
His
place.
friend visiting the house. Yeah.
And what's
Interesting.
unfortunate is they had other items from Klingel's garbage that they didn't get around to testing. So they didn't even do a thorough enough job to establish that they had Klingel's DNA to test against the DNA that they also hadn't determined was from the Zodiac.
Was it the 78 letter DNA? I assume the 78 letter DNA that he would have been tested against.
I thought it was
the strongest sample, right?
No, I think that was from the July 31st original set of letters, and they couldn't establish that it was definitely his, and it wasn't complete. And
there is an addition to that report if you look at it, and it insinuates that it's the 78 letter.
Is that true?
Well, it's a long time since I read it, but that's what I took from it years ago. Yeah. So
was it true that Klingel wasn't living in Eureka at the time of the letter when the letter was mailed? The Eureka card to the Chronicle, which is where they found it. But he moved there like a year and a half later. But I understand his daughter was living there at the time of the keys would have been connected to the post office box.
That's interesting.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the date. His Blandina died. His third wife.
Yeah.
Which
was that random death where I think they ran into a horse or something when they were driving and it killed his Blandina. I think that's how she died.
I think she died in September 1993. But she was buried in Turlock. So if he was living in Eureka, why would he bury his wife 300 miles away in Turlock and do a 600-mile trip to the cemetery? It doesn't make any sense.
No.
So I don't think he was
her last wishes, maybe.
Maybe that's a good point. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I don't have any info on that. I'm just trying to throw out any possibility.
That could be.
Klingel shows us how little we know about any of these people.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, the big Klingel thing, right? Didn't Voight say on Discord, Druzer, that so weren't they looking at arresting him for forging the Eureka card or something like that? That's
I don't know that any arrest was pending.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know that was verified or not, but
there's nothing illegal about what he did.
Is it like taunting a victim or something? I don't know.
No, there's no mention of murders, no mention of Zodiac.
Yeah.
Just from your secret pal, like sending a secret pal card to a newspaper.
Yeah.
However,
I mean,
Drew was asking, what do we think about Chester Klingel? I think he's a very strong suspect for fabricating the Eureka card. I think that he probably would be my top suspect for that.
Yeah.
I think Druzer said on your show, Ross, and it's equally fascinating if he faked it or if he's the Zodiac. It's like equally bizarre if he faked that.
I agree.
Well, if they've got his DNA, why don't they just test it against the stamp on the Eureka card?
I mean, that you think at
so many questions
that, we could hear about that.
He wasn't worried about, if it was him, he clearly wasn't worried about sending his post office box keys with all the numbers on.
That's my problem with it. That's my
it would have been, he would have done that intentionally. I mean, because Zodiac would have never made a mistake like that.
No, that's going to get traced back to you. I know we talked about it when I had you on, Richard, but I mean, so you don't think that the Eureka card is authentic, correct? Do you have?
No, I actually do think it's authentic.
Okay, that's where I'm at.
But
Zodiac?
Bearing in mind that was 1990 and DNA was discovered by Alec Jeffries, was it, in 85? So people would have probably taken precautions by 1990. So no saliva on an envelope after around 86, 87, maybe when it got widely known. I would expect no criminal to be that stupid, but hey, criminals aren't the cleverest.
If they test the Eureka stamp and find that no saliva was used to seal it, then I'll believe it's Zodiac.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that Zodiac definitely didn't use saliva, but we can't. We haven't yet proved that he did.
Yeah.
But now
So-
here's something, though. Here's something like the mailing of the 2 keys with the Eureka card, the Xerox copy of the keys. As somebody already said in the panel, that really is not a Zodiac move. I mean, the Zodiac is putting things like, the secret messages into the cars. He'll send the piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt, but that can't be traced back to him. Mailing a key that has a number on there that you don't even need a microscope to see. I mean, that's just like, well, and as we saw, even a fool would know that someone can trace the number back to who has that post office box. And, well, they identified Chester Klingel. And, would the Zodiac try to frame somebody like that? Possibly. That I could accept, but that would be such a big giveaway if the real Zodiac Killer would mail in a copy of his own keys. And I don't think the Zodiac of the 1960s would have done that.
There's
No.
3 things about the Eureka card that are different from any of the Zodiac cards. I believe so, anyway. One, he doesn't address himself as Zodiac in any way, other than handwriting, I suppose. 2, he doesn't threaten them with anything.
No.
And 3, he gives the press 0 reason to publish it. There's no
That's
impetus
great.
for that to be published.
Yeah, no threat.
So would you lean towards a forgery then, Druzer?
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. We don't know who Zodiac is. We certainly don't know his intentions, let alone what he was doing 20 years later. He could be a sad, desperate man who wants attention bad enough that he's willing to essentially, put the cops on his trail, knowing that a card isn't going to get him arrested, but will get him looked at and give him attention. I wouldn't be shocked.
Right. Somebody posted that in the chat. They said, he probably wanted to be caught in the height of his infamy, but couldn't make it easier. It would take away from his infamy. And perhaps FK, I'm crack proof in frustration. And that was from Adam, just giving a shout out to him. It sounds like you're saying something similar to that, Druzer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible and it's compelling, and that's why we're still talking about it.
So
but it's another who knows.
challenge question for Richard then. So Eureka card, including the post keys, does Zodiac make that mistake, or we have to have some other explanation?
Well, I was going to say the Zodiac liked leaving subtle clues. I think his cards were the cleverest part of his mailings. And when you look at Druze has heard this before, but you have to ask why don't you photograph the keys? Why don't you just write them? Why don't you draw them? Why do you photocopy them? And it was surprising that the guy who invented photoelectric copying, Xeroxing, was Chester Carlson. So
It is interesting.
And also,
Yes, I read that on your site.
Interesting.
And also, who was featured in the card? Groucho Marx.
Mm-hmm.
That was the 100th anniversary of his birth.
Wow.
The commemoration.
He died many years
It's
earlier.
definitely interesting.
Well, it's also interesting because although, everyone on screen here, when we see Groucho Marx, we think of the Zodiac Killer, but I'm not sure that association was very solid in 1990.
Yeah,
I doubt
Was
it.
it?
probably
Like,
not.
Grace
I mean,
Festival
how did that
went
come
on
about
for-
first? Was it because they thought, I think what Misty thought it was the Groucho Marx version of the Mikado,
Yeah.
but later
Yeah, Bell Telephone.
it found out to be it was a right. But was it the Groucho Marx version that Zodiac was quoting from, or was it another? I thought I read where there was another one that was more direct quote than the Groucho Marx version of the Mikado.
It's debatable, but Groucho Marx also starred in the Mikado in terms of acting in it. So there were reasons why you can connect Groucho Marx with the Mikado. And I suppose then you've got the follow-up with the Exorcist letter, and Groucho Marx sang Tit Willow. And then you've got the Eureka card in 1990. So you have got 3 communications that could possibly link to Groucho Marx. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know.
That and Secret Pal, of course, it's just screams Zodiac. I mean, on a lot of levels. But like Druzer said, there's 3 big things that are not. But 1990 is a different deal. But it needs that whole angle is fascinating.
Also, Druzer's point, I think Ned and Druzer's point, that Robert Graysmith's Zodiac comes out shortly before, so it's kind of reignited the subconsciousness of the zeitgeist. More people reading the book, more people familiarized.
He sent it to the Chronicle, right? He sent it to he sent the card to the Chronicle, and it was found how long later? Like it was just like a fluke. Someone found it in the mailroom. Like, oh,
years later,
who found it and thought, yeah, and they thought, oh, this kind of sounds like Zodiac.
I think it was found right away, but then it was put in the shelf with all the others, and then it wasn't until 2007. Maybe it had something to do with the film production, but then it was sent to
That's
Tom.
interesting. It makes you wonder if Graysmith had anything to do with it, or but I don't know. Just wild. But why would he send it to the Chronicle? Let's say that Klingel Zodiac or no Zodiac. I would rather send it to SFPD maybe than the Chronicle.
If it wasn't sent to the Chronicle, I would absolutely say it has nothing to do with Zodiac, not even an inference of Zodiac.
Yeah,
because it sent to the Chronicle from Eureka.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore.
Chronicle's the big media center, obviously, because of Avery and Fagin.
Oh, yeah, no question. That's where almost every Zodiac letter was sent after the first ones.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out that for the longest time, I said that the Eureka card was the unconfirmed communication that I thought most highly of, the highest chance of being authentic. For a long time, I thought that because of all the reasons you guys list off, the Groucho Marx connection, secret pals, very, very similar handwriting in some ways. But over time, I had to believe that maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe it was all fabricated by Chester Klingel and it was some type of weird, sick prank. But, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it turned out that the Eureka card was authentic. It's just, there's contradictory evidence.
But have you considered what the point of it all was? Because he didn't write Zodiac on it, like Druzer said. So what was the point of it all? If you wanted to get attention, you'd put Zodiac on it, or some crosshairs, or victim count. I don't understand the purpose behind the card.
It rings
Even
a lot
if it was
like
a hoax.
that. Yeah, it rings a lot like that Saint Donna card that got sent to Donna Lass's family. Just
the 1974 one.
Yeah, kind of like the indirectness that Richard was just referring to. But I mean, later on, Red Phantom, Red with Rage, doesn't Badlands not what it's like a citizen or something. So for a while there, the Zodiac moniker gets completely dropped, for going off of similar handwriting. Anyway, I won't pretend to know about the correspondence. That's obviously Richard's domain. But from what little I can extrapolate.
I'll say to Joey that the San Francisco Chronicle was a huge publication.
Yeah, I mean the Bay Area is massive alone.
In the Bay Area, it was
it was a major newspaper.
All three of the papers that he wrote to had large circulation.
Yep.
Yeah, the Hidden Magic FLT 555s covered in my episode 1, the Seaside Slayings, possible reference to the swindles. That being said, did you want to do my favorite subject, Jerome? You want to do some Dominguez Edwards?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can beat Druzer to death with non-canonical. It's my favorite thing to do. Does Richard still
Okay, Ross,
believe?
can I throw in one question to Drew before that?
Do it up.
We have one here in the chat from Tom Baker, and this is, I guess Drew has to take this one. Do you think Don Chaney was gay?
I don't think that was a question, but
no.
What it says is, I think Don Chaney was gay. I think Don Chaney was gay. That was relationship partners in crime.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't take that question as a joke or anything. I've gotten it before from people.
I'm asking it seriously. Yes.
About it. I have no knowledge that he was, but people have asked that and wondered if he had that kind of relationship with Alan. I mean, people have honestly asked that. I have no idea. Of course, he was married to a woman. He had 2 children, but that doesn't mean a whole lot, right? Lots of gay men have had families. But, I always think of Alan and Chaney kind of like Leopold and Loeb, if you know that case, where the 2 friends decided to murder a young boy, and they got caught, of course. course, but they were trying to do the perfect murder. I think one of the two in Leopold and Loeb, because I think they were lovers, but one was more interested in the other. It makes me think of those two, but I don't know. But I've been asked that before, which I always think is interesting when people ponder that.
Be much
Yes,
more
and I want to be
interesting
clear.
theory,
I wasn't
that's for
asking. I wasn't asking as a joke. I was asking that in all seriousness.
No, it's
because
serious.
It wasn't
Yeah,
a
I
chat.
take that. I take that. No, if people have asked that in a serious context, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Of course,
like
Arthur Lee
you-
Allen. Arthur Lee Allen. I think for the most part, Arthur Lee Allen preferred boys. I mean, of course, the ones that he got caught for and the one he went to a Atascadero for
Mhm.
was, I think, a 13-year-old male. Although he was known to fondle female students at Valley Springs. So I think if Allen had a preference, it was for males or young boys, of course.
And I think the easiest way to put it for Alan is that he was a bisexual that preferred males. And Tom Voight was even posting on BBOR once that Alan was not a homosexual. And I think what he meant by that is he was not, completely gay. He was a bisexual and who preferred males. But I think that that's the only fair way to put it, actually, because as Drew said, I mean, what about all this stuff about Alan, targeting female victims? Yeah, I think that's the long and short of it.
We have nothing to say he targeted female victims, even with his sexual proclivities. This was a pedophile living in 1969. End of story.
Yes.
Yeah, and they thought they could reform you back then. They thought you could be reformed if you were a pedophile. They thought they could somehow straighten you out.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
that's an interesting question.
That brings up, since we were talking
see-
Alan. Sorry, did someone say something? Go ahead, Jerome.
For me, I think like you, Drew, but for me, it was more Cheney and Panzarella. Because when you see that they were friends since 1962, and they were again in contact after a long period of time, and Don Cheney had worked for Panzarella for I don't know many time, but for a little while, and for a job, a really crazy job. I don't remember what it was, but the job that Cheney was supposed to do for Panzarella was to choose people or
Hiring and firing at Science Dynamics.
yeah.
It was a cushy job working for a friend on a company for a company that was going straight to the moon. I mean, they were doing computerized medical billing. Panzarella, of course, electronic engineer, very highly intelligent, made a ton of money. But of course, Jerome, there's great little circumstantial pieces for Panzarella, because you talk about the Scotch tape letter. I don't know, Richard and Druzer know the letter so much better than I do if they think that one's legit or not. But of course, it says you can find my name on a Scotch tape lid, and of course, it says St. Paul, Minnesota, where they made the 3-inch tape. And I know that Sandy Panzarella had one of his smaller companies. Of course, the big one was Science Dynamics. Was called St. Paul Incorporated. So his name literally was St. Paul. His name is Santo, which is saint in Italian, and so his name was literally St. Paul, and he knew that because he had one of his companies was called St. Paul. So of course, the dragon card, you have Sancho Panza, and that whole tie-in. So there's a lot there for Panzarella. For me, it's just like, man, the guy had so much going. He was starting this company that became huge, got bought out. He was a multimillionaire. To risk it all, I don't know, but I do know one thing about Panzarella is that he was very insecure, and despite his looks, his wealth, he had deep insecurities because of a long missive that his daughter wrote on Facebook, and she quickly took it off. I wish I could find it, but it talked about how insecure he was, which I always thought was interesting.
But like I was explaining last week and the week before, I don't think Panzarella was the trigger man. He was not the killer. I think it was the Don Cheney's part. I think Panzarella was more the voyeur, the peeping Tom. I think this guy liked to watch, and I've explained that in my theory. The fact that we are asking ourselves a lot of questions could be explained if Panzarella is with Don Cheney, but not killing, just watching what Don is doing.
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, I don't have the truth, and I don't really know if it's plausible or not. But when I say him in the documentary, his name was actually Alan. He really take the defense of Don Cheney. He claimed that he didn't like Alan at all, but they were they were all friends. Not
Oh,
not
they were all
not
friends. They
with,
were all friends. Of course, John
yeah,
Cheney's
yeah,
best friend was Ron.
yeah,
Cheney was
with
Ron's
Ron.
best man at his wedding. They were friends first. Of course, that's how
Yeah,
he met ALA. It was through Ron, and then
Mhm.
stayed good friends with Sandy. But it is strange that Cheney would leave a job like that, making that
yeah,
kind of money working
that's
for a
true.
friend, unless there was a falling out we don't know about. And then I think there used to be a report that Allen was in Manhattan Beach, is where Science Dynamics was based, and he got, I don't know, remember the cause for that, why Arthur Lee Allen would have been in Manhattan Beach around that time, which is fascinating, but it's something I got to look up a little more. And another thing about Panzarella, real quick, is I always thought it was interesting, and this is, you can't believe everything Graysmith says, but he said in shooting Zodiac that Sandy Panzarella would talk about the Zodiac case for hours with Robert Stack, of course, the actor, and the host of Unsolved Mysteries. Yep. They would talk about the Zodiac case for hours. The two of them were good friends.
And
yeah, in the same times, he can recognize Don Cheney when he met.
That's what I was about to say, Jerome. When Cheney pretends to shake Sandy's hand and pretends
that is bizarre. That is so weird. Graysmith has nothing to gain from that.
I know it's not Cheney.
Yeah, they walk into a room, and when they're going to make the movie, of course, and John Cheney walks into the room, and Sandy's there, and Sandy recognizes Don Cheney immediately. Hey, Don, how are you? And Don like, who are you? Like, doesn't he pretends he doesn't recognize Panzarella, who had Parkinson's disease. That's why he sounds so odd. And his name was Arthur Lee Allen, because his speech is affected from his Parkinson's that he eventually died from 3 or 4 years ago. But the Cheney did not recognize Panzarella immediately, even with Parkinson's, because he didn't change looks that much through the years. It's stunning. I don't know why he would do that. Like, he didn't recognize him immediately.
He's obviously pretending. It's one of the weirdest things he ever said. I mean,
he's a strange guy. If you like him for Zodiac or not, Cheney is one odd duck.
100%.
Well, and his lies don't really make sense. Like, even
no
after,
sense at all.
Yeah.
Even beyond the 70s, he's making claims like he'd spoken to Alan about events that hadn't occurred yet.
Yeah, like flying the plane into the Sears Tower.
Yeah, he says
Alan that he told Michael Butterfield.
Yeah. So I would consider that Cheney had some issues of his own.
He definitely did. Any way you look at it, Zodiac or not, he's fascinating because what he did and what he did not do. If Alan tells him he's going to become Zodiac and all this stuff back in, give him late 67 or why wouldn't he tell Ron, or hey, like, you better think long and hard before you call yourself Zodiac and kill people? I would have told people, hey, this guy's crazy enough to go do this.
You wouldn't have waited 2 years.
Wouldn't have waited 2 years, 2.5 years. Even if you give him New Year's Day of 69, he comes forward in July of 71. So why would you sit on it for so long? The revenge play doesn't add up.
He wasn't too concerned about the kids on the bus.
No, not at all. Or any other couple that could just be, he acts like that Alan definitely had the ability to carry out the threats, are going to Lake Herman Road just days after the murder and not realizing that a young couple was killed there just 10 days or so prior, 11 days prior to that conversation.
Yeah, that Cheney's almost like another Shones, Drew, from Yuba, that how he drinks and
oh my God,
spins tall tales. You know what I mean?
Such a bad witness, horrible witness, just like Shones.
But what I was going to say, like with him leaving the job, like, just real quick, per Jerome's theory, if it is something that's them connected, maybe Sandy either tells him like, hey, you should probably find another job because it's like a little bit too conspicuous if we both work here. And then regardless, Alan is the perfect patsy, regardless of what the situation is.
Yeah. I mean, Panzarella had so much to lose, unlike Cheney. Panzarella had man, the world on a string. The guy had the world on a string. I mean, his
Yeah, he's like, I don't
was-
want you working here because I don't want this getting tracked back to me. You know what I
When
mean?
was Cheney
Yeah.
married?
No other explanation, you know.
Yeah, sure.
When was
But
Cheney
the St.
married?
Paul is, and then Jerome found another piece of circumstantial evidence. That, we'll call it that. Let's just say a coincidence or a synchronicity. Probably better phrased. I can't remember what it was that Jerome found.
His
God,
son,
what was it, Jerome?
His son's company.
Ah,
It was
oui, yeah.
It has, yeah, his
Well,
son's
it's
company.
son's
Company.
film company.
Yeah.
What was the name of it?
Um,
It was like a Zodiac type connection.
It was like the
Yeah.
wasn't it the dragon
to the
character
son's
from
company,
the
or I don't. No, it wasn't the Dragon card, which was Don Quixote and
wait,
Saint.
I thought it was like Don
Quixote.
Quixote
Something else.
Productions or something like that, Jerome.
wait.
No, it was something Productions, but it was. Maybe it was. Was it Quixote Productions or something?
Yeah, I think it was. I think
That's
it was
even
something
better.
like that. Yeah,
That's stunning. If it is,
yeah.
it was.
That-
It was a company of his sons.
That kid obviously has a weird obsession with what's going on.
He won't
Yeah,
talk.
yeah.
That's for sure.
Regarding Alan, the thing that Drew and I were talking about that Richard covered on his website, which was the press release from Santa Barbara sheriffs when they refer to him, and they're essentially talking about the Zodiac suspect, and they're like, we have him living down. Oh, and I want to get back to Druzer's question too for you, Drew, but they're like, we have him living down here in the area. I know you made an article on that, Richard, but what did we ever have Alan live down or living down near like Santa Barbara? Because that's not really something I ever saw much about, So I didn't really understand that announcement.
Maybe I don't think he was living down there. Maybe Druzer knows a little bit more about this than me.
I don't know more about it, but I thought I had heard that they had Alan down in Santa Barbara, and that was perhaps a reason why they had tentative confidence in the Berryessa or the Santa Barbara crime.
Yeah, that's what they insinuated in the press release.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. The press release it seemed like it was I had never seen that before, Ross, till we had a show.
Yeah.
Where there,
it was
I
about
guess
Alan, wasn't it?
Alan was in the area.
Yeah, they were insinuating in the press report that they were just making the connection between Berryessa and the Dominguez and Edwards case and Alan, who was the
and that has nothing to do with the Seawaters, right? Nothing to do with the Seawaters crazy story about Alan murdering Bobby and Linda and then getting back in the car covered in blood. No one
Never
believes
buy
that.
it.
No. I'll tell you,
buy it.
if that happened and they saw him come back covered in blood, then everybody else saw it too. Every other person in Santa Barbara driving by that highway. You know what I mean? We literally don't have one witness other than, and I think that channel's gone.
I heard they were working on a Netflix show. I don't know if I'm supposed to, repeat that, but a lot of those are shot. A lot of those are, maybe the Hoffman guy's getting Jay Foy or whatever his name is. But he's probably working on one. But I know they film a lot of those shows and they never see the light of day. But I think that
there's too many of them.
The content down.
Yeah,
just as you said, Drew. So many people are in talks for these Netflix shows or media specials, and are they just going to be putting out a Zodiac one every 2 months or something like that? That would be very saturated.
No, very few, very like the one we did. The one I did with Horn. We didn't even know that was going to see the light of day.
This is not professional at all, and this is there is no respect for the family, for the victim. For every 4 months, we have a new Zodiac suspect. One time it's my father, one time it's my grandfather, one time it's the cousin of the guy who know my grandfather.
My mother in the case of Ray Grant.
Yeah,
yeah. But here's the thing. You know why?
Michael O'Hare's mother.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Michael O'Hare's mother.
You know what? You know why they shoot so many of those, Ned? Because they're thinking, well, if the FBI or SFPD ever verifies this, well, we're definitely going to put this documentary out. So even if they don't put it out immediately, they're thinking if this ever gets solved, oh my gosh, our numbers are going to go through the roof. Now it's never going to happen for any suspect they've ever shot.
Look at it from a producer's point of view. If you're not a Zodiac expert, you're a television producer, and you get a pitch for an extremely famous crime, and here's a new take.
Yeah.
But you're not
That's
a
what they
Zodiac expert.
like.
You haven't read any of the reports.
So
The
You're
perfect
not-
example.
Colbert
The
method.
perfect example. I have opened this channel to talk about Stephen Avery and the documentary Making a Murderer on Netflix.
It's really popular.
Really popular. And they have made a few months ago a new kind of a documentary on Peacock, presented by a woman. I don't remember her name.
Candace
But-
Owens.
Candace Owens.
Oh,
Thank you.
man.
Candace Owens. And I have watched everything, and really there was nothing new, nothing you can learn, and it was in 10-part episode. There
Yep.
is nothing new, but for them it was really a big stuff, really wow, we have new witnesses coming. No, this is not new witnesses coming to talk. It was already in the paper, on the police paper, on the everywhere, if you know the case. But if you don't know the case, like you said, you say a show like this and you're impressed because you think, wow, I don't know that. And
Yeah.
but for what? Make money.
Yeah, that's what Rich was saying about the TikTok audience. You know,
Yeah.
you can come with a hot headline.
Yeah, make
you
money.
know, another
Making money.
example is the Cobain case. There's apparently this
Yeah.
guy who came out recently saying that he was a witness during the murder. They have now conveniently a patron set on with probably, I think, 800, 900 people on there giving them money. And the stuff that they're leaking is just completely unsubstantiated. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's becoming the trend in true crime for a while now. Unfortunately,
It's for you. It's for Drew. It's for you.
That Sheeny is way too tall. Well, Drew's addressed that many times.
Oh, that's
over
old.
the years.
That's Robert. I could answer that. That's old news, of course, because
Unmuting.
Tom Voight famously interviewed Don Chaney at the Hood River Inn. Very no connection there, right? Hood River Inn. There's a synchronicity there. That's where Tom interviewed Don Chaney and said when he met him, because I think Tom's pretty tall. I think he's 6'2". Said Don Chaney was taller than I am, and they took a picture together. I guess probably the waitress took it, and Tom's kind of leaning into Don Chaney, saying, "Hey, I'm 6'2". Look at this picture. He's obviously taller than I am." But of course, I have Don Chaney's DDR 214. He was 6 feet tall, which is what Tom said in one of Graysmith's books. I think it was the one after Zodiac, where he said when I met him at the Hood River Inn, he was about 6 feet tall. So I guess he just misspoke there because we were able to establish he was 6 feet tall, which is a decent height for Zodiac. If you go back to, of course, Lake Berryessa, Cecilia said about 2 inches taller than Deputy Dave Collins, who said I'm 5'10", and then of course we talked about Mike Michaud said 5'8".
Yeah,
and then I think the Presidio heights from the Robbins kids and a Falk 5'10". So I guess with Zodiac, I think the sweet spot is probably 5'9" to 6 feet, but the overriding thing in Zodiac descriptions is also some form of stocky, barrel-chested, beefy build. Michaud, that's the one overriding thing. But height-wise, I think I think Larry Kane's a bit on the low end. I think Larry Kane was 5'7", but we talk about height all the time in DB Cooper. So
5'6" to 6
Zodiac
foot, you can't rule anyone out.
Yeah, that's good point. 5'6".
Jerome.
We do not have enough witness descriptions to be confident in how tall he was.
And then a wing walker might have a good size heel for Berryessa. Well, going back to Sherry Joe Bates, was there anything in common with that military print? I know it wasn't a wing walker, but what was the shoe size from Bates?
8 to 10, but they didn't have the full shoe print, so they couldn't be certain.
No.
Yeah, that a heel
So
print.
if you call that a mismatch with 10.5 at Lake Berryessa, I think you're pushing it a little bit.
The watch size is small though, so you probably don't have that beefy.
You don't know that the watch belonged to the killer.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing I was going to bring up when we were talking about the DNA to her pants. Like, for whatever random reason, let's say that watch was already on the ground or something, and the killer just happens to touch it in that struggle. Then it, matches the touch DNA, like Rich was saying, on the watch and her pants, but it doesn't necessarily make it his watch. That's me totally making things up. Challenge question for Jerome. could you have Panzarella as the Lake Berryessa lurker, the nice man with the nice
That's a
looking
new
man
thought.
with his hair?
Yeah.
slicked back?
I think it was him. Yeah. Really.
I figured you were gonna say that.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
what?
yeah,
They
I
said
think-
nice looking. Panzarella was a nice looking guy.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, by
That's why I came up with
anybody's.
that.
That's interesting.
And I don't know, Drew, if you remember, I've sent you a picture of Panzarella dressing like the guy in the comic with the wheels of death, the cowboy in
The
red.
lady of doom.
Lady
No,
of
there's, no, there's
Doom.
an
Tim
executioner,
Holt?
right?
Like
Tim Holt. Yeah. The guy
Tim Holt.
wearing red.
Western cowboy.
West,
Oh,
yeah.
the red mask. Or red mask.
Yeah, exactly.
Tim
And
Holt.
That's
Panzarella
interesting.
wearing exactly the same thing, but in black. And I see that on Instagram.
Oh yeah, he's got the black hat. Are you talking about the picture?
Yeah.
I picked that from his other Facebook, but he's wearing the black hat, and yeah, I
Yeah,
never
yeah.
saw Panzer. I'd love to see Panzarella's handwriting. Not that we can,
No,
Jerome
Jerome has
take
it.
it to the
Jer-
bank.
Jerome
It would be
posted it.
interesting.
I have.
Yeah.
I have
Do
it.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Send that to Drew, Jerome.
You have some of
Yeah, yeah.
Panzarella's handwriting?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I must have missed it.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been working
And-
too hard.
and I have already.
What does it look like?
It looks like a little bit like the Zodiac, but not like Chene. Not like Chene.
Yeah, it's interesting. You'd have to compare them. Compare.
What
it to
is
Chini.
it? Where did you get it?
Some form, right?
Or can you say someone on a forum found Panzarella's writing?
No, like a form. It was like something he
No,
filled
no.
out.
Oh, a forum. I thought you said a
Yeah.
forum. I was like, wow,
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
dug into that much.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's where
That's
I
interesting.
find it. Yeah. And I find something else. I was wow. Two things. First, I find the birth certificate of Sandy Panzarella, which
He was born in New York, I think.
yeah, right. Which the date?
Oh, what was his birthday?
December
December-
20th.
December 20th.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
Lake Herman Road.
And
Yep.
1928. Exactly 40 years before the first attack. Exactly.
Wow.
40
So
years
No, he
after
could have.
the
He
first
could have
attack.
been born in 28. He was younger. Panzarella was younger than Cheney. He was born in 34.
It's a registration card. That's his draft registration card, right, Jerome?
Ah, yeah.
it's not his
yeah,
father?
Yeah. So he found Sandy's draft registration card.
Because Panzarella would have been born like in 40.
I see this document. Maybe it's altered or I don't know.
Could have been his father.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, and something I maybe it's nothing, but on the Instagram of the son of Panzarella, who has the same name,
39. Sandy Panzarella was born in 39.
39.
39,
So-
1939.
Drew, Druzer was asking you when Cheney got married, or if you know what year.
62, I believe, in
Okay.
Pomona.
Which is
You just
Wait,
said he had
Davis.
nothing to lose. Seemed like
Not like Panzarella did. I mean, talk in terms of a company and money.
Yeah.
But he had,
Yeah.
of course, he had a family.
Yeah,
Had a
he
family
made
to
money,
lose,
but-
but
yeah.
Panzarella just had a,
And-
I think
and
General
Panzarella-
Dynamics bought Science Dynamics.
Yeah, it's something
Actually,
like this,
I
yeah.
have a question for Drew. You mentioned you appeared in the documentary for the Myth of the Zodiac Killer with Thomas Henry Horan. If you could redo the documentary again, is there anything you would change about it? Is there anything you would add? Is there anything you would subtract? Like,
Good question.
what do you think about that?
I'd put more of my stuff in, but because I did a lot. You know, I was trying to fit in my stuff with it, and they have a lot of raw footage of me doing, kind of my stuff. Of course, it was about, Tom's theory, which was great, and I think they did a really good job with it. Of course, that theory has its critics too, but I thought it was going to be a bigger deal when they did the handwriting analysis, and because that was kind of their big reveal was
The
that it was the AI and the analysis of that, where it was two writers going into the Stein murder. Of course, there wasn't much written before Stein, other
Absolutely.
than the debut of Zodiac and the three letters that came with the 3-part cipher. But it was just 2 writers, and then after the Stein murder, it goes to a single writer, and we filmed that in a different location in St. Louis because that's where Thomas lives, so it's convenient for him. But that was the big reveal to me, and I was like, "See, I told you, this is 2 guys," So yeah, it would have been interesting if I could have gotten a little more that way, but they only have so much they can put in, and I think they did. I think Andrew Doc did a really good job with that, and he still gets a lot of interesting emails from people that have watched that documentary from around the world. And I talked to him on the phone maybe a month ago about some interesting stuff he had heard about Arthur Lee Allen that he wanted to pass by me, which was, just he runs across a lot of things that it can shake out, because when you put out a show like that and it gets enough viewers, somebody might remember something, but most of them are just complete dead ends.
For sure.
I was just surprised that the myth of the Zodiac Killer didn't focus more on Hal Snook and maybe doing some handwriting analysis of his, because that's Thomas
point.
Horan's biggest thing that he says he can.
That's his
prove that
wheelhouse.
Hal
Yeah,
Snook
the
wrote
handwriting
letters.
started it all.
But Hal Snook was not even discussed in the episodes, from what I recall. Actually, after that came out, I was getting all these comments on Black Box Online Radio saying, "Hey Ned, did you see the documentary that accuses Graysmith of being the Zodiac?" I'm like, whoa, what film were you watching? I didn't get that vibe at all, that Graysmith is the Zodiac Killer, or even the whole primary hoaxer. But that was just something that I've been much more curious about, because you guys know I used to think very highly of Hal Snook as a Zodiac suspect, and he's gone pretty far down over the years in my book. I was wrong.
Well, you guys know just how dense this case is.
Dennis Land thing. Same with Dennis Land.
Yeah.
One thing that Shooting Zodiac mentioned was they were trying to find Dennis Land, I think, according to Shooting Zodiac. If you like Grace Smith, it's all a grain of salt, but I think they did find Dennis Land before he died, and said he was very standoffish or weird. I mean, I would have loved to have known more about that.
Well, Graysmith interviewed Dennis Land in the early 70s, right? In Zodiac Unmasked, Graysmith tells a story of interviewing Dennis Land, and I think he meets up at Lake Berryessa, and I want to say Land arrives by boat, but it's been a long time since I read that book. You mean in the decades after the early 70s?
Decades after they had tried to track him down.
Sure.
What were you saying,
and he
Druzer?
committed suicide in 2010, right?
Supposedly on Farron's birthday or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's right, March 17th.
Cecilia's
That's true.
birthday, something like that, right?
It is.
One of their birthdays.
At any rate, I was just going to make a comment that with these producers, when they're not experts and they and they sign up for such a project, they're playing catch up the whole time.
Yep.
You guys know how dense this case is to get a firm grasp of it. What did you guys what were your conclusions after a year of looking into it? You're probably dead certain on some theory, or you're completely waylaid by Graysmith or some other thing. I think halfway through the productions, these guys think, well, maybe we got to put on the brakes just a little bit with this Earl Van Best or whatever.
Oh my God!
Hulu didn't pump the brakes on that. they went full pedal.
But by the end of the film, they basically come clean and say,
that was that author.
Yeah,
that was that author who wrote the book with him. She's like, "Oh, this guy swindled me," and you know what I mean. Then she totally
Susan Mustafa.
Yeah, just like the D.B. Cooper was that Netflix Drew, and Colbert pushes rat straws, and 75% of the case breakers are like, "Yeah, we stopped working with that guy because we don't think he has it right." It's like the same situation, I know that's Cooper, but it happens.
But with the Gary
in his own documentary, they get the prime suspect blows him out.
But with the Earl Van Best documentary, they openly stated that Gary Stewart most likely falsified documents. He most likely falsified Earl Van Best's records from a state hospital, which he claimed was from Atascadero, and they showed directly how somebody falsified it. Now, it could have been Susan Mustafa, it could have been Michael Wachschel or somebody else, but they really made it look like Gary Stewart, and nobody cared. And it was Mark Hewitt, actually, who told me about this. He was like, "Oh, hey, wow, Gary Stewart's been completely exposed as a fraud, and somebody told Mark Hewitt, "Hey, did you see that documentary? I think that guy's dad was the Zodiac." Just nothing registers. Someone watches that, and they're even more convinced that Earl Van Best was the Zodiac.
Well,
They
that's
just don't get
what
it.
that's how we started. I was saying, like, like Ned just reiterated, the announcements are always louder than the correction, So when the FBI tweets, "Hey, no, it's not closed. It's not Gary Francis," like only 10%, maybe us and a few other, feeds we follow recognize that. R. Irwin's comment that Jerome just put up, Don Cheney's wife had a passion for making greeting cards, according to her obit. That's interesting, Drew.
I didn't know that. I knew she was a.
I didn't either. Wow, cool.
I like that. That's
I
Eureka
knew
all
she was
day,
a quilter.
Richard.
And of course, his daughter was a comic book artist, a pretty talented comic book artist, and ran a comic book store. So there's a comic book connection, of course. And Tim Holt visited Don Cheney's high school while he was there to a Boy Scout meeting when Don was a Boy Scout. Tim Holt showed up in full regalia, RKO.
Yep.
So it's probably one of the few cases where Tim Holt was in the same room, assuming he was there. I don't know.
That one. Drew knows I love the
Distant
comic books.
relative of Joseph Holt. Just saying.
Oh,
What happened?
Joseph Holt, the serial killer or murderer.
Yeah, a really great researcher on Discord, calls himself Shake Dog Shake. Has been doing genealogical work on all of the victims and people who are arguably related to the case. And apparently, Tim Holt shares lineage with Joseph Stephen Holt. Is that his name?
I'm so sorry about that. Sorry, Tim Holt. Joseph Holt was not a good person.
That's
But actually,
interesting.
just
I like
saying,
that
there's a
approach.
question in the chat, and I think it's a good one for Richard Grinnell. It's from Sam Fisher that says, "Curious to know, what are your thoughts on the Scorpion ciphers?"
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't think they're necessarily authentic, but I can see why people suggest that they are. I did find 2 segments of code in the Scorpion ciphers with 2 repeating symbols the same distance apart, where you can slip Zodiac into it. So that
Now, Richard, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, bearing in mind there's so many symbols in that cipher, it's almost uncrackable. So the only way to actually look for anything significant is to break it down into little parcels. That's why I thought if Zodiac's in there, his name might be likely in there. And that's when I found 2 repeating symbols, which is quite unique for that cipher, not for any other cipher, but for that cipher because of the variation. That's the only thing I found. If you asked me if I had to go one way or the other, I'd say, yeah, they're from Zodiac. But, it's 51% job.
But Richard, is this true that there were 5 Scorpion ciphers, but only 2 of them have been released to the public?
I've only seen 2.
What?
They've only
What's the
released
background on this? What's the background on that? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I don't know about it.
They were sent in 1991, was it? Or 1990? 91?
I think it was
That sounds
91.
right, 91.
To that, what's his name again? That famous show in America.
Walsh.
Dunbar?
Yeah, John Walsh.
Oh, yeah. America's
Most Wanted.
America's Most Wanted.
Yeah. They were sent.
Sorry, go ahead, Richard.
No, they were sent to him. I really don't know. What's everybody else's opinion on this?
I haven't read it.
Well, they certainly don't look like the Zodiac ciphers. I mean, this would be something like maybe the Zodiac was using the light table and the drafting equipment to create the 1969, 1970 ciphers, and then he just free-handed and simply drew the Scorpion ciphers because they're very sloppy. It definitely looks like something that wasn't done with care and precision the way that the Zodiac did in the 60s. But also, the whole thing about one of them says, "Hi, remember me," and then there's this, cipher. I think that that's something the Zodiac would do. If I had to make a determination right now, I'd say they were not authentic, but, I could be persuaded because the Zodiac was always changing and always evolving, and he was, which one of you guys was it who said he was consistently inconsistent? Was that you, Ross? And,
It sounds like a Druzer term.
Sounds like Druzer. It's a good.
Yeah.
Good comment.
was that you, Druzer? Okay, well,
That was me.
I'm not clever
So
enough
as
to
you
say
see,
something like that.
Zodiac was consistently inconsistent. He could change it up, but I would say not authentic if I had to make a determination.
Well, I think the Fairfield letters are absolutely 100% genuine, and those cryptograms were a mess.
They were.
What about the new Canaan cipher, Richard? The new Canaan,
No, I
Connecticut.
think
Is that?
now I found the two people mentioned in that cipher.
The boy that there was a girl. Yeah, she's still alive, right? The girl that was mentioned.
Yeah, there's two girls mentioned in it, and they're both in the same yearbook year. So, and one of the names of the women is not particularly common. Forgot her name off the top of my head, but I went to the year that was relevant to those letters, and I found these two women in the same class, basically, and so they're fake. They were sent by, like Morph said, they were sent by a young lad who had a few things wrong with his brain.
Yeah, but so it was good. The language you used was pretty good. I mean, I think that's a pretty good fake for the time when maybe he only had access to the Graysmith book at the time.
They sounded a bit childish.
So, who want to answer to this one?
I think we kind of addressed that last time, but Druzer answered it in the chat. They made the killer a blubbering racist piece of garbage. It was Scorpio. He was a raving lunatic. Plus, Zodiac wants to look cool. He doesn't want to see how cool Clint Eastwood looks as Dirty Harry.
Brilliant performance, by the way, by Scorpio.
Yeah, I think we're gonna bring that over to my channel and get a review going so we can do the Zodiac comparison.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Amazing, but I would like to take a stab at that question though, just because in 1971, is it possible that the Zodiac was dealing with some type of mental instability in 1968, 69, and 70, maybe even substance abuse during the height of Zodiac activity? Substance abuse, I'm not convinced of. And people go through periods of mental instability, and then maybe he has reached some type of return to normalcy where he's not like at the same level of destructive behavior. And I'm really trying to be careful with my words because I want to say stuff like psychotic episodes, but I don't want to overstate something. But it's almost as if, he's gone through this cooling off period where he's no longer trying to kill, because then we have the halt in Zodiac activity for 72, 73, and then he's just like returned to normal life and he's not so focused on anything Zodiac related. Oh, they made a movie? Well, whatever. I don't care anymore, because I'm just going to work 9 to 5 and I guess coming home and watching the evening news and so on. That's just a possibility.
Can I ask you a question then, Ned?
Yes.
How do we know he didn't send anything about the Dirty Harry film? There was a 148 character cipher and letter in 71. There was the Monticello card in 71. There was a Novato letter in 72. There was the Albany letter in 1973, and none of those were released. So how do we know that there wasn't another 10 letters released in that period that they just got tired of releasing because he wasn't murdering anymore, and so he wasn't relevant?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's possible. And Sam Fisher, who's in the chat, was the one who brought to my attention about the 148 character cipher, that it uses the same type of symbol. Like, what is it? Sam, you're here, right? For the letter H that's used in the 340 cipher. And there are things that match up about that. And I think Sam was encouraged to think that that was authentic. Of course, that's possible, Richard, because as I understand, they're getting hundreds, if not thousands, of letters from people, genuine hoaxers, and also, things that look like they could possibly be Zodiac.
Authentic, yeah.
Entirely possible.
Also, 3 unreleased Zodiac letters, so how about he just references it way later after the movie? But I totally see Ned's point. But I disagree at Zodiac missing a film at the level and scope of Dirty Harry. I mean, if we're going with the film references, of course, you have The Exorcist, Badlands, Red Phantom, if that is a film reference, Rampage at Vanishing Point, like Richard pointed out on his. So, and then you add in all the other, the Most Dangerous Dame adaptations, or the 10th Victim, the TV movie. Like, if he's the 10th Victim plays on TV right before Lake Herman Road. So if he's referencing these people hunting films like Most Dangerous Game adaptations and totally obscure ones, or even lesser known stuff like Vanishing Point, Rampage, The Car. I watched the film The Car. You know what I mean? Like, that's like a kind of a random horror movie. So how does he miss Dirty Harry? Clint Eastwood is like this Western legend, and then Scorpio is clearly based on him. You know,
There is no way.
Doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
Fair question.
The odd thing about that time period is that they had, after deciding that they weren't going to publish his elaborate bus bomb letter, his very long letter, and then it seems like they just sort of put the brakes on publishing anything. But then a few months later, Avery publishes the 13-hole card and the Halloween card, and then he investigates Riverside. Clearly, they would have. It seems to me that they clearly would have published something that Zodiac had sent at that time, and yet we then have several months where he doesn't write anything, and the next time he writes is to the LA Times, and he has criticism that he's being buried in the back pages. So that's a real gray area for me as to how they're actually handling his materials at that time.
And in 1987, certified document examiner Robert Prouty said they were getting 15 hoax Zodiac letters a year. You can calculate that they probably diminish as time goes by. But if you add all that, that could be literally 200 letters. And my question to Robert Prouty would be, how do you know they're hoaxes? You've got no DNA, you've got no fingerprint matches. You can't do it on handwriting.
That's true.
Just subjective.
Yeah. Who knows how many authentic ones we missed or just unreleased?
We don't know.
Exactly.
We could have
Right, because we're talking so much about Dirty Harry, but what about the 1971 Zodiac Killer movie? And people ask me this all the time. Why didn't he respond to the Zodiac Killer movie that was directly about him? It could be everything Richard just said. There were authentic communications that were dismissed. It could also be what I said. Maybe he has reached some type of return to mental stability for some reason. And, that could be countless factors. Or it could be an unrelated issue that that we aren't necessarily sure about. Mike Morford talks about stressors in someone's life that would drive them to kill and then drive them to stop killing. It's a mystery.
Well, the story with that, I was going to bring that up. I'm glad Ned brought that to us. The story with the 1971 movie is, they had that screening downtown in that theater, which I think had the Zodiac ceiling in San Francisco. And they had that guy in the chamber where you'd put the notes in, and because he didn't have oxygen, he passed out. So the note said, "I was here." So Graysmith, I talked about this on my show. Graysmith muddies the waters with this story. They apparently go upstairs to a guy who is getting like overly excited at the murder scenes. They try to corner him in the bathroom. Graysmith said that guy was going to the bathroom and pleasuring himself after the violent scenes, which supposedly is not really what happened. I don't really know what.
It's not what Hansen said.
Yeah, graysmithing, to use Drew's term. So I'm not really sure what the angle was there. But yeah, so if you believe that story, I don't know we've ever seen a copy of that note, Richard, but it would be interesting to see that handwriting. Does that note actually look like Zodiac's handwriting? Like
what Hansen said is the guy talked to him in the bathroom, and the guy said that the blood doesn't shoot out that way or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Druzer's right on that quote. The Sam Fisher question for Richard: could Zodiac have a British accent?
No.
Unlikely. Yeah, I'm asking our resident opinion. It's unlikely, but just to make the argument, though, as far as like dialect coaching, I mean, there's tons of actors, Christian Bale and Batman, when these British or, what's his name, Hugh Jackman in Deadpool and Wolverine. When he plays Wolverine, he totally drops the Australian accent. So it's not impossible, but based on Slover, Slate, and Hartnell, I don't. You think some accent would have slipped when he was talking,
Absolutely.
The guy in Walking Dead was British, wasn't he? And nobody knew that in America.
Oh, dude, I forgot about that guy. Yeah, Andrew. Dude, he was. I heard that guy speak. I was befuddled, Richard.
Yeah, the stars of The Wire too.
Yeah, so there's a lot of actors.
Other guy,
yeah. Christian.
Yeah. My favorite was always Hugh Laurie on House. I mean, I thought because we know who Hugh Laurie is, we know he's British, but I mean, he didn't give away a single hint at all. Not like a single syllable was misspoken. It just looked so authentic.
I didn't even know that one.
Damian Lewis in Band of Brothers. No accent at all, and there's a lot of accent just like Richard.
It's very possible. Now, could some guy with, an average paycheck that doesn't have a dialect coach pull it off in 68, 69? Well, that's another story.
Doubtful. Doubtful.
Yeah,
To do
much
that with
more
Brian
difficult.
Hartnell to
Doubtful.
talk for up to 15 minutes
But he
and
was-
not
but
let
Zodiac
it slip up.
Yeah, the
A
long
lot,
variation.
a lot of the British
But it's true.
people who do American accents,
but
most of
he
them
was an
are-
Anglophile.
Yep.
Most of them are from the theatre, so they're trained.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree. Did you guys want to do a little? I'm just watching the chat. Do you guys want to do a little Dominguez Edwards Gaviota, or did you have other things in mind, Jerome?
Yeah, I would like to share.
That or
with
Ray
you-
Davis. That or Ray Davis.
Yeah, either one. I'm good for either
Yeah,
one.
yeah, and Ray Davis. Yeah, but just before, I would like to share something with
Do
you
it up.
and ask you what you think about that. And we've already seen that last week, but
Hold up, real quick, Jerome. Look at this R Irwin comment 308. Seriously, check out Miss Cheney's obit. Her son Kevin leaves a note referencing that witty thing several times. Withy is a word that means willow. True. Tit willow.
I guess that was a comment that Kevin left. I didn't see
Yeah, it's right here in the chat.
that, but I want to go find that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
Irwin, email that link to email the
I mean,
obit to
he's,
Drew. Yeah.
Yeah, please do. Drew Beeson at yahoo.com. Please do.
yeah, and subscribe.
I'm sure I can do
So,
this material.
Here we have, guess who it is? Susan Atkins.
Atkins.
Yeah,
That-
and here
Church
we
of
have.
Satan. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep,
It
Church
was
of
a
Satan.
movie made by Anton LaVey, and she was playing a vampire, a strip vampire, and this is the guy who played the execution. At me.
Yeah, it looks like Berryessa a little.
Yeah, I think it looks like Berryessa a lot. I think that's one of the best matches.
Yeah, me too. Because when you see the hood and you
Comes
see
down a little,
the stuff will come down here, you can put a cross, and this might be nothing, but
I hate to be picky, but we need a square top.
Yeah, I was coming to that. Zodiac's is more square, but I mean he can alter that.
That's true. Like a grocery bag in America. Yeah. The square
Yeah, Drew
top
knows
is right.
Drew knows my Church of Satan theory, so that's Jerome. Co-signing everything I've ever said right there.
Yeah, that's always I think of Ross every time I think of Anton LaVey or Michael Aquino.
Well, that was my big thing when Anton LaVey goes on camera and he's like talking to Tashi or whoever the newsman, and he's like, or no, excuse me, it was Toski, and he was saying, yeah, LaVey gave me a bunch of names because they didn't want Zodiac and COS, and like I tried like hell. I don't know if you ever found anything on that, Richard, but I tried like hell to find out who those members were the names that he gave to Toshki. So like, are these just random people that are weird in the cult, or do you actually think
that wouldn't be released? I wouldn't think.
Yeah, or do you actually think one of these guys is Zodiac? You know what I mean? And then there's Temple of Set.
That was LaVey's son that claimed that he knew, I thought.
Yep. Yeah, it was from the story was from LaVey's wife, and I think it was his grandson.
Okay.
That and that was another merchant marine, Drew, as you know my theory there.
Yeah, and the tar box and the
Yep. So another couple.
Of course, Chester Klingel was a merchant marine, correct?
I believe so. Yeah. So that's a third one. So me and Drew have our little list there, so to speak.
Klingel was a merchant marine, so that's a vote for something in his favor.
Yeah, we can move on. Ray Davis.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, Ray Davis, man. I used to not consider that Zodiac, but now a friend of mine really got me into it more, and Ross, thinking more that with the cab and the book and the phone call.
Yeah,
and the
2
Davis
phone calls,
murder.
I believe.
Yeah,
Paul.
What did he say in the phone calls?
He said, "I'm going to pull something here at Riverside that you guys will never believe."
For Oceanside.
I believe he used the word
Oceanside,
right?
Yeah, Oceanside. Yeah.
Well,
say,
for
Drew?
people who doesn't know, this crime occurred on 1962. Ray Davis was a cab driver who is been shot by somebody who after have calling the police or the press, or no, the police, and
Police, and then
the police and
and then
claiming what he have done, like the Zodiac has done after. So
he threatens a bus driver. He said, "Next
yeah,
time I'm going to
also
get
yeah,
me
next
a bus
time,
driver,"
yeah,
which is a lot like kiddies bouncing out the.
yeah.
You want to stretch it to the bus bomb threat.
Yeah, there is some stuff here to talk about. So we want to start. We want to start on Ray Davis, and
Yeah,
maybe the
Davis,
connection with Paul Stein, or
cab
absolutely.
driver
Yep.
executed.
because you
What's
see-
the
oh,
ballistics,
oh,
Ross? What were the ballistics for Davis?
22
ever-
long, but it doesn't match like Swindles or Santa Barbara
or Lake Herman or
Lake Herman, so it's just different 22 long firearm. But here's
it's
the
interesting though. The 22 though,
yeah,
I don't think they
Yeah.
were able to
Like,
make such tests.
they're able to what?
I don't think they were able to do any such comparisons.
Perhaps. I know that what was it? Think Swindles was tested to Lake Herman, but I don't know about the rest.
Oh yes, I mean the Ray Davis shells. I'm not sure that they had
Really?
them to
I
do
didn't know
those
that.
tests.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, so one thing we do know is he's touched by his belt. So the killer, the killer dumped the body out between the two. What was it? The mayor, the former mayor and the current mayor's houses. The
Mhm.
body was grabbed by the belt
Right.
loops and dumped. So he kind of touched that one, maybe similar to Dominguez Edwards. Also, what he steals the cab, but he only drives it basically like a block north, which I always thought similar
10
to Drew.
blocks.
Yeah, okay, so he drives it north, but I always thought that was similar to how Stein's cab stops at Maple and then
and
goes
goes on
up
Cherry.
to Cherry. I know
goes
that's
up another block.
Yeah, it could be some sort of northern travel, magnetic north, Zodiac BS, random speculation by me. But yeah, there's
What
not
was the
that
name
much
of-
on it. Go, Drew.
What was the name of the book? What was the name of the book that was in the cabin? Is it
Dance
known
with
for
the
sure
Dead.
that the killer owned the book?
No, it's
They don't
likely
think he did.
Davis's. It's likely Davis's because when they're sitting for fairs, they're just reading or whatever.
Oh, okay. So no one with Davis is.
It was Dance with the Dead by Richard S. Praler.
Yep.
Interesting
Yeah, I got
if
it low.
it was Davis that he had a book called Dance with the Dead and then he's murdered.
Yeah, I mean it's more weird synchronicity, right? I know when I talked to Christy when we interviewed her in episode 2 of the Zodiac Files, subbed that on my channel, she said that she read the book trying to look for any hints to the Zodiac case or whatever, and it was just kind of boring. She said, I didn't go that deep.
And she's the first person that thought this could be Zodiac, right? Was her when she wrote about it? Was the first person that thought that could be a
she
Zodiac.
discovered it. She thought it was a local crime, but then it piqued her interest with the Paul Stein comparison, and I guess she got in contact with Voight, I guess, from his forum, and then they did a couple of interviews or whatever.
Well, absolutely, because even though I don't think Ray Davis was the Zodiac, when I first heard the story, I was like, oh my goodness, where did you find this? Look at these, similarities to Paul Stein. I was a little bit, blown away myself, by just kind of like what Ross likes to talk about with the full circle theory. Because even though I don't endorse that, I'm at the point where I can comprehend it. The full circle theory with Ray Davis mirroring Paul Stein, Dominguez Edwards mirroring Lake Berryessa, and then who knows what goes in the middle. Sherry Joe Bates, the epicenter, and then it starts over again. No comment on that, but I comprehend it. I mean,
No, it seems like there is maybe not a pattern, no, maybe not a copycat, but reference of the crime by the Zodiac because
influence.
He was influenced by this crime because I think the guy has no ID at all. In his letter, there is nothing. In his cipher, there is nothing. He pick up some stuff on the right, on the left, on the book, and it means anything about his identity or his life, or so. I, I see this all this stuff like how can I say that? Like if he was not not really existing. You see what I mean? If he was a persona, a real persona, and but not in a real world, in his world, but not in the real world. And I'm asking, is it must be a stuff that two guys had working on it, or maybe it comes from one person, but it's strange because sometimes he say that, sometimes he say that, he contradict himself, eh, and there is so much. And because we talk a lot about Riverside, but what Zodiac said about Riverside, he talked about his activity in Riverside. But what does it mean? Really, what does it mean?
Yeah, no
Because
details.
because after with Paul Avery had a contact and they make the connection with Cherry Joe Bates. But if Avery had never received this information, this anonymous information, we will never make the link between Riverside,
Slow
the
boat to
Cherry
China.
Joe Bates killing, and Zodiac. So I really think Zodiac is not involved in the Cherry Joe murder, but
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about people jumping on the letter writing campaign and the Riverside activity to being similar to like the canonicals, obviously that Ray Davis killer makes a phone call before and after, which is similar to
Yeah.
what Zodiac does at BRS and Lake Berryessa.
Yeah.
And Davis didn't get the same fanfare, obviously, because Avery didn't report. I don't know if Avery reported on it or not, but not to the fanfare that it got picked up to be a scene in the movie. So if Davis gets mentioned early on, more like that, then maybe you have a scene, or if Graysmith would have covered it, then maybe you would have got a scene in Fincher of them looking into Davis, and then you'd have the whole, basically the phenomenon that we have in Riverside. You'd have the same thing going on kind of in Oceanside. One thing that you'd like for your theory, Jerome, is isn't Davis from Pomona, Drew, or didn't he move?
Yes. Okay. So Ray Davis was from Michigan, I believe. He moves there with his wife. They're living in Pomona when he becomes estranged with his wife. I think they have a daughter. I don't know if it was Ray's biological daughter or not. And then he moves to Oceanside, where I believe his brother was living at the time.
Yeah, that's correct.
You probably know. But his wife, he was living with his wife in Pomona for about 6 months or so when they moved from Michigan, and then he moves down to Oceanside with, I believe, his brother.
Yeah, so the Pomona connection, Jerome, is Cheney. So if you have your boys,
Cheney was living in Pomona at the time in '62.
Yeah, if you
and
have
I couldn't find. I thought I could find Ray Davis's wife, but it was another lady with the same. Davis is pretty common. I don't know if she stayed in Pomona or not, but I was never able to really find out where they lived in Pomona. But that's where they were living when he moved to Oceanside.
So,
and guys, jump in now. I'm gonna have to get off the stream, but
me
thank
too,
you once
Ned.
again, Jerome, for having me on. And
I gotta run too.
Good to talk to you, Ross, Druzer,
Thanks, Jerome,
Drew,
everybody.
and Richard. I mean, much appreciated.
Have a good
Thank
day,
you,
bro.
Ned.
Good to see you, Ned.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right, yep. Everybody in the chat, you guys already know where to find
I'll
our
check
stuff,
us
but I'm
in
Ned
a
from
little
Black
bit.
Box Online Radio, and I'll
And
see you
sub this
guys
channel,
on
French Wrecking Crew.
tonight, actually. Yes, please.
Good
All right,
stuff.
you guys have a good one, all right?
Cheerio.
Cheers.
Drew is on Drew Beeson, missing person. Go sub his channel too. Great. I love his Yuba County 5 stuff. But Jerome, if you have Cheney and Sandy up to their old hijinks in '62, then that puts them in the mix. I want to say somebody. Yeah, it was Mr. Flagdaski. Wasn't there a Navy base close to that first cab murder? So there's an extreme military presence in this greater San Diego County.
Yeah.
So it's Camp Pendleton. Marine base is right near there in Oceanside, but there's several. Literally, the Navy SEALs are centered here. Massive Navy bases. There's we pretty much Air Force. We have all three the divisions of the
But
military here.
if I can ask you, why we have this assumption that the Zodiac is obviously a military or come from the Navy or come from, because like we don't know. I'm going to say something completely ridiculous, but it's maybe a woman who love make cookies. You see what I mean? We don't know.
So I
can't
think
know.
it comes from. I mean, Richard and Druzer will tell you. I think majority of it comes from the Wingwalker footprints at Lake Berryessa. The only problem, like I've heard people report, like these are only military. You could only get these in Navy, Air Force. That's not correct. Like there was prison guards who had them, prison personnel. So it's a little more expansive. And again, of course, you could go to an Army Navy store and buy used ones, right? Literally any citizen could. So, I mean, I don't know, probably that, but I guess it gets brought up also because almost all of these canonicals and all of these non-canonicals are near a military base. So I don't know what that's, Sherry had her father and her brother had a military family. Like you just take your pick. You'll see it in a massive amount of victims. Of course, Dominguez Edwards Gaviota Beach is right near Vandenberg Air Force Base. So there was a lot thought with the ammunition and that it literally comes up in every one. And then the San Francisco, obviously, like Charlie Chan at Treasure Island, the Treasure Island stuff. I mean, it's kind of an endless list, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And then also, I don't think Arthur Lee Allen helped because his father was Navy, right? And then he was like some sort of Navy reject. So I think a lot of it just comes from the Navy stuff and the Wingwalkers.
And they think he was a good shot.
They thought Allen was a good shot, or they thought
Zodiac was a good shot.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that's been more debunked nowadays because the military. So Brian, you guys knew Brian from the old Zodiac forum. I don't think he's on there anymore. But Brian from my series was literally a Navy marksman. I mean, like top class, like literally like instructor, expert level Navy marksman. I want to get his opinion on Lake Herman Road because when you look at the grouping on Betty Lou's shoulder, not a single one of the shots are even near each other. And then, like we were just saying about Blue Rock Springs, it's not even really close. And like Rich was just saying, for a guy standing in the car with his hand through the window, the barrel is basically inches from Mike at that point, right? And maybe only a foot and a half, 2 feet from Darlene. So I can't explain that, obviously.
No, you cannot miss.
I can tell you, Brian does not think highly of Zodiac
shot. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that goes without saying. And then Paul Stein, there's not a whole lot of marksmanship involved. Ray Davis, there's not a whole lot of marksmanship involved, but there is that random shot through the windshield. None of us have any idea. If he literally missed in the back seat, I don't know what to say about that. Brian's theory was it was like a warning shot, which makes a bit more sense, If
he was in the back seat, which certainly seems that he was, then perhaps Ray saw him through his mirror at the last second.
Yeah, or even struggled for the gun and maybe pushed it off, before he was able to.
Yeah, it makes sense.
On his back. So, yeah, that's we brought up the discussion of ballistics earlier. It's a slippery slope because of just the inconsistency in both the non-canonicals. Even if you want to talk to Mingus Edwards, probably even bigger problems marksmanship wise with that, because it's supposedly what we're told. Check out Richard's articles. He's gone in depth on it that, it could be either an automatic pistol or automatic rifle. Based on statements from law enforcement, it seems like it's an automatic rifle. And then we got a problem for when dude, like right in the middle of the struggle, supposedly gets punched in his face by Robert Dominguez. Yeah, they kind of run away and he still puts like 20 shots into them. So it kind of does bespeak to he was trying to do something to them before the shots were fired, which most people assume was the Lake Berryessa knife scenario. I know Richard's disagreed with me. You can check his articles for that.
But what I was going to say about Ray Davis, there might be another connection between Ray Davis and the Zodiac Killer, because there's a good argument to be had that the Zodiac Killer also rang in before the Stein murder. If you think of the Jim Dunbar show, he said on there, "Didn't you ring me about 2 weeks ago?" And we know by the hesitation, he hadn't got a clue about this original call.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks ago would have been around the 8th of September. that's the time when the Good Citizen letter arrived. So it ties in with that. But also, what you have to remember is when the person rang the Oakland Police Department to actually arrange the interview, the dispatcher who took the call said that the guy provided evidence that he was the Zodiac Killer. And he was asking for Melvin Belli. So if the person 2 weeks ago on the 8th was also asking for Melvin Belli, there's every reason that could be the Zodiac Killer, because Eric Weil had no reason to make that phone call before any murders had taken place in San Francisco. So there might be a comparison between the two in that sense. I mean, I don't think Ray Davis is a Zodiac crime, but nevertheless, that's an interesting comparison about calls made before the murder.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
If you believe the typed Riverside confession letter, it says I also made that call, which is supposedly to Chief Kincaid. So going on with what Richard just said, that would follow that pattern. That being said, Richard, I'm interested, if you don't think Davis is Zodiac at all, do you buy into that, random Southern California influence theory that Jerome was just saying, that he could look at Davis and look at Gaviota and look at those for a blueprint for Stein and Barry?
Yeah, maybe other crime that we don't know.
Yeah.
He was a product of his society, so he could have been influenced by it anywhere going back from Jack.
Anything and anyone. Sure. I did agree completely.
And in addition, there's also that supposed phone call to Belli's assistant, right, Richard? So I don't know if that plays into the, she said she talked to him, or I guess Belli was traveling or something, or not.
Yeah, but it's in holiday.
It was January the 14th, though, not December the 18th.
Yeah, and they played that up in the movie.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it was Alan. The Oklahoma call. Oh yeah, I think Drew or someone mentioned this. Maybe you. No, that is you.
Yeah, because it was a question before, and
they had a recording of the Oakland call. I don't
believe
there is no.
They didn't keep it.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it. My comment was the Oklahoma one, which
recorded, trashed without the police taking.
Yeah, they said they'd got the recording and invited the police to come and collect it. If they had, they could have compared that voice and given it to Brian Hartnell and Nancy Slover, but the police, for some inexplicable reason, didn't bother. And there goes another opportunity.
But in my understanding, at the time there was no recording the call coming from the police.
Slover?
So Slover.
No.
Radio station recorded.
Yeah. He's talking about like before the Dunbar show. They obviously
before.
Sam Fisher, I believe his Lake Berryessa stabbing was more like a bank robbery than other theories. I think the Zodiac bank robbery in December 1968 was him as well. I wanted to point out that I don't think anything was stolen from Ray Davis. Like all the money was in his pocket or in his wallet or whatever. Obviously, he took a piece of Paul Stein's shirt and his keys.
Yeah. And his wallet. Yeah.
Same as Lake Berryessa.
Yeah, he was going to steal their car and obviously left everything.
And do you know about his glasses? Is the Zodiac still the glasses of Paul Stein?
Ooh.
They recovered the glasses, I believe.
Or
at least Tom says they did. So.
Okay. I'm looking in the chat to see if there is some question. If you want to ask any question to Richard, Druzer, or Ross, go ahead.
Well,
I just want to say something real quick.
Go ahead and take your time. Take your time, Drew.
I thought it was a giant breakthrough that there was no school buses in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But great poster on Discord, and Tappa calls himself Gorilla Train. Good guy. He found a mention in a newspaper about school buses.
About school
so
buses.
To some extent, there was a school bus system. Just to clear that up.
So the first episode we ever did of my interview series was actually Giant Brian from the Zodiac Files, and he grew up in the Bay. I don't think like downtown, but he grew up in the Bay Area, and he was actually on the buses when they had they switched all their bus drivers to like SFPD officers or whatever, and then they had the police escorts. Like that was a a big
Yeah.
deal. That had a major effect.
Obviously, there was buses in the Bay Area, and arguably that's what Zodiac was threatening.
Referring to
My interest was that if they had
downtown.
0 school buses in San Francisco specifically, and that all of the kids walked to school or took muni buses, as I believe is largely the case, then the Stein letter, which threatens to shoot kids on a school bus, seems like someone writing who doesn't know San Francisco. But as I say, to some extent, they did have school buses, so you can all relax. They had school buses.
No, I mean, I still think that you have an angle there, though, as far as, him either being North Bay or East Bay, or like I was even saying before about the Sacramento stuff down the line. But it's super weird for him to go all the way downtown, kill Stein, and then have that letter and threaten, like you said, a city that maybe doesn't have as many or as high density of school buses. But I don't know. I find the whole bus bomb death machine thing, very inconsistent. Crack this cipher and you will have the location of the bomb. Like, I don't know. There's just something it's like unorganized thinking as far as what the other threats are. Like, I'm driving around killing lone people in the night. I'm going to do my thing. Even the Kathleen Johns threat or, other of those things just have more cadence to it. With this, I'm like, okay, we got to, you got rained out in your basement. It's like excuses, Druzer. You see what I'm saying? Like, you got rained out in your basement. Oh, by the way, crack the code and then you'll have the location of the bomb. You know what I mean? It's just like grasping at straws,
I think if they didn't call him an idiot in the press, he wouldn't have come out with a ridiculous cipher that no one without a computer could solve.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
He wouldn't have come up with the elaborate bomb plans.
Yeah,
and then they didn't publish it, and that made him even more angry.
Yeah,
and he had to double down on it.
Trying to show how smart he is. You know what I mean? Trying to show how smart he is. Yeah,
And what about his ego? Because when you see the persona, he wants to be print in the press on front page. He wants to go on TV. He wants to have the best lawyer in America, Melvin Belli or Alfie Belli.
Mm-hmm.
It was. He talked about him in a movie. So this guy has a huge ego, but really huge. It's incredible how huge his ego is. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And when you see that, I think, but I can be completely wrong, I think the idea to kill in San Francisco, it's to have the best of the best, David Toschi, on the case. But I can be completely wrong. But in the idea of his ego, he won always the best. He won the best show. He won the best lawyer. He won a movie on him. He won to be on front page. So maybe he won the best cop to investigate on him, to ridiculize him, to don't be caught. I don't know what you think about that, but for me, it makes sense. I don't know.
It's a little more than the best too. He also wanted like the highest, notorious media figure. Like Melvin Belli had guest spotted on Star Trek right before that. We know Zodiac was watching TV and movies, and it's not just like the best lawyer; it's also like the pop culture reference. Like he wanted the guy that was featured on the Star Trek episode. But Melvin's ego was almost as obnoxious as Zodiac's. Later on in his whatever biography book, he writes that he definitely talked to the Zodiac in that television show. He knew at that time it had been verified that it was Sam Wheel and not Zodiac, but yet he writes it in his book anyway and lets it go uncorrected. So definitely interesting elements there.
Can I ask Druzer a question?
Yeah, Richard. Absolutely.
You said they had Stein's glasses at SFPD. If that's the case, why did they take Deborah Perez seriously when she offered them the glasses?
Yeah, I said that they did recover the glasses because Tom Voight said they recovered the glasses, and I have nothing further on it. Regarding Perez, I think they didn't need to disclose what they had. I don't think they cared so much. Maybe you're right, and they didn't recover them, and so they did go through with the testing and couldn't confirm. But they may have just said, we don't have to say anything, so we're not.
Or Zodiac was wearing them.
Maybe I don't think I would put on something to blur my vision if I was trying to escape from the cops, but maybe.
Especially if Zodiac already had his own prescription, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think for me, what settled my opinion was Cecilia Shepard saying that he had glasses on before the hood.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take her at her word.
That was the only time, wasn't it? Because Majot said no glasses.
Majot specified no glasses.
No. But I think it was not the same glasses at Lake Berryessa that at Polstein. Because when you heard the statement, she talked about sunglasses, a kind of sunglasses you can clip.
That would be an addition, though.
Yeah, but that's on the outside. That's on the outside of the hood.
Outside, yeah.
So he could still be wearing his regular eyeglasses on the inside.
Yeah, but if the sketch of in San Francisco is accurate, this type of glasses you cannot put this kind of sunglasses up.
Well, they were clipped.
You couldn't clip them because they were thick rimmed, you mean?
I never see that. I never see this kind of glasses with.
He means the flip on.
A flip, a flip on.
Yeah,
never.
But, I mean,
never.
Obviously, we have very little info on what kind of glasses
sure.
According to Brian, who got at the lake, who got a good enough look to allegedly see hair through the eye holes, past the glasses, past the other glasses, and then describe the hair.
Yeah,
I have a little problem with that, but at any rate, he suggested that the clip-on sunglasses were clipped onto the hood itself,
right?
As opposed to how we would clip glasses onto glasses.
Yeah. So you see what we're saying, Jerome? The aviator's sunglasses clipped to the eye holes of the hood, and then his regular sunglasses.
Yeah.
So it's like 3 layers, which is weird, but that's a Zodiac thing to piggyback off what Jerome was saying about, he wants, the most infamous cop or the most famous cop, Toshki, to investigate him. He wants the most known lawyer, in addition to what I was saying about Belli. So Steve McQueen played the character in Bullet, who's based off Toshki as well. And that was in 1968, essentially right when, much like what Richard's article was saying about Vanishing Point being like kind of like a racing movie, like Bullet has those like those similar car chases, like a famous car chase scene in it. So that seems like the type of thing Zodiac would be into. There would kind of be no way that he would not know about Bullet, or at least Steve McQueen if he's a movie fan. And it was the way he's wearing the holster is Toshki. McQueen spent time with Toshki before shooting. So it's like you said, now you've got Belli from Star Trek, Toshki from Bullet. You know what I mean? He's going after all the people that have been in TV or movies, or at least that's how it looks,
I think it's a little misleading to describe Toshki as a celebrity before Zodiac. It's true that McQueen met with him and took the cross holster from him, but I'm not sure how much more was like. I think Toshki was just the cop who he spoke with. I don't think McQueen knew who Toshki was beforehand.
No, not maybe McQueen, but I mean for the general public, or maybe for the papers, the newspapers. I think Toshki was a reference.
Later on, he certainly boosted his own celebrity in several somewhat suspicious ways and did become this
Yeah.
celebrity.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say famous, but like maybe like a local celebrity, Druzer, like a
Yeah.
like down
Yeah.
in the city in SF, people know him. You know, as you said, then you have these catalysts, Steve McQueen and Bullet. Later on, the Zodiac case, obviously Ruffalo plays him in Fincher. That's obviously, you know, after the book, blah blah blah. But you know, we assume that Zodiac is this Bay Area local, so although it hasn't caught on to the national zeitgeist, you know, like all the stuff you just said, you know, maybe he knew of him. Oh, this is the cop from the movie, whatever, or following his statements in the newspapers, whatever. And then, you know, obviously the letters just get, you know, increasingly more obnoxious and annoying as far as the tone of Zodiac and, you know, the I need help from Melvin. You know, Druzer and I talked about that. And then obviously Toski's name comes up. We probably all have varying opinions on that, as Druzer said. But I think Jerome's point still stands. I mean, he could ask for a random local SF attorney no one's heard of. He could ask for a random guy off the police force. He doesn't do that because it doesn't get headlines in the paper, you know? Like,
Yeah, I think if Zodiac knew as much about police procedure and criminal conduct and all these famous cases that perhaps he's alluding to, then I think he would know Belli from his professional work probably more than Star Trek.
Maybe.
for sure.
Or maybe by a friend who knows Belli.
Yeah, that would be the Chelcavale theory, that he actually knows them all personally, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I'm,
Yeah, there was a threatening letter to Steve McQueen as well.
Interesting.
That's true. The 78 one or 77?
77.
Not the one that was sent to the TV station, but an earlier one.
The one in 77 it gave a list of celebrities that he was going to target, a bit like the Channel 9 letter listed a few. And this one mentions Steve McQueen, and I think he was demanding the release of 3 prisoners, wasn't he, from jail? And I found that a few weeks or a few months, I can't remember exactly, before the Steve McQueen letter, somebody had targeted a prison busing kids and families to the prison.
Wow.
I think you mentioned that at one point.
I didn't know that. Wow. So, Guy, would you like to answer some question in the chat?
Yeah, I could bring in.
If
Yeah,
you
I'm
look at the
interested in
period
the
in the bank robbery note, it is way of like in other Zodiac correspondence.
Cat Daddy Steve, right here. Wouldn't ALA be too paranoid after the cops interviewed him after Berryessa to kill Paul Stein because they might be staking him out, tailing him? I mean, I don't know how a Zodiac suspect that's a reasonable one could be interviewed and then pull off a canonical after that time and literally have no one looking at it. That would be insane.
No, and in the same time, so Arthur Allen is the one who claimed there is some knife in his car, bloody knife, because he ate a chicken.
Yeah.
So, and it was not an info asked by the police. It's Allen who gave this information to the police by himself.
Yeah, a little later on, he follows up. If ALA was a prime suspect, wouldn't you put a 24/7 trail on him? I mean, you'd think so, but nothing with ALA panned out, so I don't think he did much.
And he claimed he was at Salt Point Ranch the day of the Berryessa attack.
Yeah, he was going to go to Berryessa, but he didn't. You know, that was just...
And I'm not sure when he became the prime suspect. It certainly wasn't days after the Lake crime. I don't think he was treated particularly seriously until Cheney came forward.
And that was 70, 71, 72, 73. What was that?
But it was after Cheney.
I think it was 71.
Yeah.
71.
So that's still 3 years after, 3 years after Stein, which is, and honestly, let's just for sake of, because this argument was brought up, let's say Alan did all the canonicals, right?
Yeah.
He just stays in Vallejo or wherever he lived, his crappy Santa Rosa, he just stays in the area and doesn't even try to relocate. Whereas, you have all this other stuff like the Eureka card and the Sacramento cards, which would insinuate, this other location. So, and like Cat Daddy Steve just mentioned, he's already been questioned. We're assuming multiple times at this point. So, the police have looked at you. They've literally interviewed you. I don't see why
at least 2 times.
you wouldn't skip town if you were the Zodiac, like.
Don't you think they just targeted criminals around that phone box?
That's what, well, the thing about him, the first officer that interviews him, right, said he couldn't remember why Alan got questioned in the first place. It was obviously because of his,
the record.
Colorful criminal record. And then, I guess around the phone call, but I've never really heard much else about other local suspects that could be in the vicinity of the.
After there was this story told by Cheney that the neighbor of Alan have seen him the day of the attack with bloody knife in his car, and Cheney obviously was with him because when he explained the stuff, he picked himself in the picture, so that's read, and he said that Alan had told him that one day he will kill his neighbor, his old neighbor, and after he was asked by the police, he was questioned by the police, and after again, but every time it comes back to Cheney testimony in 71 and Cheney and Panzarella, because there is a lot of people who forget to mention Panzarella, but when the case, tell me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But this is really Don Cheney who take his friend, not just his boss, take his friend and his boss when he was working for him, telling, do you remember this guy, Arthur Lee Allen? In 1968, in December, he told me, blah, blah, blah. We know all the story. And Panzarella say, okay. I'm going to contact, not Toski, Armstrong.
He contacted the local police, though, right?
Yeah,
the first one, the first one, and I think they don't take it seriously. So he had called Armstrong, but not Cheney. Panzarella had called Armstrong to tell him, my friend Don Cheney have a story for you, and if you can send somebody. So Armstrong heard the testimony of Cheney and Panzarella because they were together, and it starts from all of that. And it's strange, this stuff like Cheney and Panzarella, this connection. I don't know what it is, but they are maybe they are completely innocent. I don't say they are involved. In my theory, they are involved, but I can be completely wrong. So,
what I would say to that is, from the way Panzarella told it, like, I met that guy a few times. I didn't like him, I know they, I guess we're like college roommates, whatever, and live, so I guess, but the way he said it was like a handful of times. And, I know this would kind of probably play it into around where Druzer's at when they do his name was Arthur Lee Allen documentary. Panzarella and Cheney love the spotlight. They love the camera. They love being interviewed and shooting the whole documentary. Yeah. And if you talk to anybody from like Allen's like closer friend circle, like people that were friends with him, a lot of those people, I think Tarbox or whoever, have spoken up on him and been like, I don't think Allen was the Zodiac. So like it's kind of two totally conflicting stories to people who supposedly knew Allen well, to Cheney and Panzarella that are like, the story that Jerome just recounted. Yeah, he told me he's going to call himself the Zodiac, dress in black, attach a flashlight to his gun, and go around in the dark shooting lone couples. You know what I mean?
It's like nasty thing to the girl.
The two versions are worlds away from each other because Alan's friends don't seem to think he was Zodiac at all. So,
No.
you know,
They are agreed that he was a pedophile. They
Right.
are,
right.
but not a killer.
Yeah. And then the Ralph Spinelli thing. I don't know,
Oh,
Rich or Druzer, if you guys have anything on that guy, but like
for
each
me,
one of
this
the
guy
layers
is a
of those
punk.
stories you get, the further out you get, they just get like, it seems more like filling in the gaps, you know? Oh, yeah, he showed up and told me he was going to be a hitman at my strip club. Arthur Lee Allen was
Yeah.
like some kind of like elementary school teacher.
And the door explodes, and the
Yeah,
guy
the
comes
fight-
from.
The fight, I've watched
I'm
that probably,
Zodiac.
dude. I've watched that story probably 10 times on the Blu-ray bonus thing, and it never becomes any more clear to me. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? It doesn't sound
Me
like this
neither.
fight ever happened.
Me
You know?
neither.
Just-
Big question.
Mike,
The question I have is whether it possibly would have gotten out to Vallejo locals or farther abroad
Yeah.
that Allen was interviewed after the lake attack.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
otherwise, that's the most compelling thing about Allen as a suspect, is that
Yeah.
someone had come forward before Cheney. I don't care much about who came forward after,
Yeah, I agree.
but
I agree too.
I don't know.
That's the big problem. I mean, was the local
Yeah.
PD officers talking to their wives and girlfriends, and you know, but also let's not take Allen out of the blame because he was kind of stroking the flames early on. You know, he wore the Zodiac watch into the interview and just did all these dumb things. Oh, I was like Richard said. Oh, I was gonna go to Berryessa that way, but I went to Salt Point instead.
Uh-huh.
And then I did kill the chickens. Like as far as the neighbors seeing the bloody knives, like. Is that all the way back to Vallejo? Because isn't that super far from Napa, Richard? That's like a 3-hour drive. You don't take the bloody knives and just throw them out on the highway on that 3-hour drive home. Like there's just, or they're in the trunk so you can't pull over. You know, like every little layer just doesn't sound consistent with
No.
what a killer. At least the Zodiac. You'd assume the Zodiac would take these certain precautions going to and from a canonical. He's not just going to drive all around all night with the guns in his car after he
No.
used them. That would make
No
no
way.
sense.
I heard a story about how Allen was first approached, and it comes from the most solid source ever, which is an unknown Redditor,
Oh, perfect.
and not substantiated in any way, but it was super specific. So I thought it was interesting. After the Lake Berryessa attack, where they get tire impressions, and they developed the theory that the killer drove a small car with mismatched tires, and of course that the killer is large. They spoke with someone. Now this is the Redditor saying they
Yep.
spoke with the owner of the Arco station, which Allen worked at, a man with the last name of Luce. And they wanted to talk to him about the cars and people he knew. And apparently, this guy pointed out Allen, his employee, as being a large man in a small car.
Yeah,
And,
I've heard
and
the same
that's
story.
why they brought him in on October 5th or 6th.
Mm.
I don't know. That doesn't.
This Redditor said he
I have
interviewed
heard. I've
interviewed
heard the same
Luce,
story.
and that's where the story came from. But he didn't post his transcript. He didn't
No,
any sort of
Yeah.
recording.
Well, Graysmith spends a lot of time on the Arco station, right? He says that's where Allen switches cars in the middle of the night, blah, 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 or the car gets left there with the keys in it, so he has access to it. So that's the first I've heard of that Reddit research, but I don't know. That doesn't, the large man in a small car, though, that's a reason for interviewing a Zodiac suspect. That sounds
no.
flimsy. Question.
But, yeah.
Keep going down, Jerome. One more to...
Yeah.
The authorities get Richard the Get Carter letter.
That's a good one.
Zodiac or not, does anyone have a theory on the timeline of Sherry Jo Bates, where she was for missing 4 hours, the time of her murder, when was the car disabled? Not found a solid theory. I mean, go check out Richard's articles, super thorough. That's pretty much was the basis. So you can also check out maybe the second best timeline, my episode 3 of the Zodiac Files. I'm just saying, you can check that out on Planet X Filmworks. But I don't know. There's quite a bit more disagreement in the timeline. I mean, people like Ray Davis try to nail it down like it's all, peachy cream. And I think I don't think that much of it is verifiable except for when there's witnesses, like supposedly her friend sees her drive down the street and waves to her. She doesn't see her with a car following her. if the car was following her, I think that would be a lot more compelling. But the missing, I mean, I guess we could bring that up to the panel. The missing hours, I'm not really with the Sherry got kidnapped all night long and then gets dumped back at the spot that her car would be, because what sense would that make? If you kidnapped her all night long for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, you could literally drive out to the racetrack or drive out to the desert and dump Sherry at a place where no one will ever find her. So you bring her back to where her car got disabled. But as far as when it was disabled, I think it was just when she walked out with her books, because they're left on the seat. So I think it was just, disabled right before she got there, as far as I can tell. But
I think it was disabled early anyway. Actually, no, he even could have disabled it after the murder, truthfully.
Yeah, true.
But in a nutshell, I would say either Sherry Jo Bates was killed within an hour of arriving at the library, and the confession letter writer is indeed the killer, and quite possibly Zodiac. Or if we go with the forensics, the autopsy and the food that was in her stomach, and the scream that was probably from her.
Yeah.
Then the murder occurred after the library was closed, and the confession letter writer is full of shit and not Zodiac.
Yeah.
I think she spent time with her killer during those 4 hours, and probably when he escorted her back to the vehicle, he disabled it to stop her getting away at that point when things turned a bit nasty. Maybe he came on to her, maybe she said, "I'm leaving now." Then he pulled out the wire. But it doesn't necessarily mean she was with him for the whole 4 hours.
Exactly.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly.
But you've got to ask if she left for those 4 hours with somebody and decided to leave her vehicle, the person she went with must have lived close by, who said, "I'm going to escort you back later. Don't worry, no need to move your vehicle." He wouldn't have lived 3 or 4 miles away, because she'd have took her vehicle and gone from his house or her house, probably a male, back to where she lived in via San Jose. So I think it was disabled late at night. And there's a good chance that I'm leaning now towards the person who wrote the confession letter being the killer, because that would explain why only one scream was heard, because the author said he choked her. And I think if it was a free attack where she was free to do whatever she wants, then she wouldn't have just screamed once and have a muffled scream, and that would be the end of it. She'd have been terrified, running all over the place. Not only was the ground really churned up in one area, that's suggestive of somebody with their arm around her neck, and she's thrusting her feet against the turf, the ground, and
got dragged,
churning it up. That's why all the wounds are in a 10 by 20 centimeter box. They're localized from the left nipple over to the right armpit, and they're only 10 centimeters down. That suggests to me she's being restrained at that point. That's why they're localized stabbings rather than a dynamic attack. And also, 4 of the wounds out of the 5 on the front are between 1.4 centimeters and 1.9 centimeters, which means they're only slightly bigger than the knife blade width. If it was a dynamic attack like Cecilia Shepard, you would expect more slicing, gouging, bigger wounds.
Yeah.
These were controlled entry and exit wounds with the knife, like you'd be restraining in a single, sort of stationary position, near as damn it.
Could you respond to this, Richard? Can it be said with confidence that one thing that the confession letter writer proposed that was not in the press is that the attack was indeed from behind, with him with a hand around the mouth? Obviously, they were all
stabbing backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, because none of the wounds are deep, are they? And then she probably leant back, grabbed a clump of his hair, ripped off his watch. This is all close contact. And the bag she had, the straw bag, was found under her body. If it was a dynamic attack where she's running away, that bag would have gone.
Yep.
Everything suggests she's being held, and the killer is stabbing back into her chest. Then I think he thrusts her forward, stabs her once in the back, and then he slices her throat. That's how I think it panned out.
Yeah, I like Richard's timeline a lot. I've never heard that before, but I mean the fact that the fingerprints all over the engine chassis and the window down, door open with her books on the seat, does that not suggest like she came right out of the library and tried to start her car while the person was I guess pretending to fix it while they pulled out the distributor coil wires?
Or her books were heavy and she decided to dump them in the car and walk off with somebody. I mean, she planned to go with a mate who didn't come with her. So maybe she arranged something else. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Or bumped into somebody and went off with them for a while.
Yeah.
I think the bag gives us a clue that it happened very quickly. She's got her bag on and there's books in it. She gets into her car, takes the books out of the bag, which is a little curious, but it's still around her shoulder. And then the guy approaches and suddenly she's out of the car, still has the bag.
But were the books in the bag ever?
Maybe not. If they were light, maybe not.
The bag was small, I think, right? I think the books might have been too heavy. I thought that was more like a
No, the
purse.
bag was big.
It was a big bag. But remember, she wore glasses and they were in the bag, I believe. So maybe she didn't want to put the books on top of the glasses.
Yeah.
Maybe she didn't have a glasses case.
Good call. What challenge question for Rich and Druzer? My theory that Zodiac's not the killer of Sherry, but could be the author of the typed confession letter. Any credence to that, or you guys find it unlikely?
Well, I'm with Druzer on this. I'm with Druzer on this. If it can be found that I believe the same person did all the three: the desktop, the poem, the Bates letters.
Yep.
If it can be found that the murderer wrote the letters, then it vastly increases the probability that Zodiac was involved.
Mm-hmm. Cigarette smoking man seen in the shadows before Sherry's murder.
Yeah.
Sherry's killer or random cigarette smoking man?
But probably a random guy. But they collected the cigarette butt, didn't they?
Yeah.
And tested it for DNA.
50-50, but I'd give $100,000 if they would analyze it.
I always thought that was him because he's like standing in the exact spot. Like, but again, it's Riverside. It's
Well, he was on one end of the alley and the body was on the other, and it was dark out. We can't. We can't say that they knew the body was there.
Yeah,
but
sure. I don't mean the exact spot, but I mean generally the area, the direction that the evidence was found in.
You could compare the DNA off the cigarette butt with the hair.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you could get mitochondrial.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Challenge question for Richard: what is the connection to the desk poem to anything else in Sherry's case or anything else in the canonical cases at all?
It's a long story. Just the language. I've gone through this before with you.
Yeah.
If you look at sick of living, unwilling to die, all that is characterized in the confession letter. That to die is in all three communications.
Yeah.
The time element is the time is mentioned twice at the bottom of the Riverside desktop, 3 times in the confession letter. You have unwilling, and in the confession letter you have willingly, and she was then very willing to talk to me.
Yep.
The crossover of language between the 3 communications is to believe there are 3 different authors who all use the word to die. I just don't buy it. I'm sick of unliving. I am sick, I'm insane. What was the phrase? I am not sick, I'm insane.
Yeah.
Everything in that desktop poem title you can find in the confession letter and the Bates letters.
Oh, don't get me wrong. You've done by far the best job of connecting them. But as far as the content of the poem itself, nothing about Sherry, nothing about a blonde cheerleader, nothing about what she's wearing. I mean, people are, interpreting this, Rich, as self-mutilation. They're interpreting it as like a suicidal thing. Like, so I don't know. I personally don't see, a direct, other than what you just laid out, semantically. You know what I mean?
The first part, I believe, is about Miss Atwood, who was survived a stabbing the year before.
By Taft, that's what I think too.
Yeah, and then it says at the bottom, just wait till next time.
Yeah.
Well, what follows on from that? I think it's Riverside Halloween, i.e., Miss Atwood was lucky she got away, but wait till next time, Riverside Halloween, i.e., Sherry wasn't so lucky.
So that being said, you think this poem is inscribed into the desk bottom before?
Well, it's ballpoint pen. It's blue ballpoint pen. It's not inscribed.
Yeah, well, I just mean like, you know.
Oh, yeah,
like etched into it. So as far as timeline of the writing, do you think this is written before, October 30th, 66?
I think it's written about the same time as the confession letter, either before.
I like that. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah.
But also, you got to remember the story where, I mean, it wasn't me who found it. It was MK Zodiac, Richard Gomez, was the cut clean part at the top. Well, the clean cut news and stabbing also ties in with the top. Also, I'll bet you a bottom dollar now. We can't find it. We've tried, haven't we, Druzer? If they find Mrs. Atwood in the newspapers, if it's ever released in the press enterprise, she'll be wearing a red dress. I'll bet anybody £100 on that one.
I'd like to see that.
Awesome.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. It's reminiscing in the present tense, so it's sort of poetry, but I don't think it's anything to do with the suicide. But hey, that's just my.
No, I'm with you,
Richard. Could you spell the earlier victim's name so that someone with newspaper.com can do a proper search? Like we're talking 1965.
65 April the 13th.
April the 13th.
1965.
Okay.
That article he found. I've tried to get it off him and he didn't reply. But that article was April the 17th. It hasn't got her first name, but she was Miss Atwood, spelled ATWOOD. 1 T.
Well, let's start with the articles. That would be that's an excellent line of inquiry.
I think that would crack it if she had a red dress and it described a red dress.
I think so too.
And so taking that a step further, if we could conclude, like a red dress would do it for me. If we could conclude that poem was about Atwood, how does that leave us in terms of Zodiac?
Well, I think it increases it again because we know Zodiac referenced newspaper articles long before, years before. And this is not a massive crime. It wasn't over-reported, obviously. It was an attempted stabbing. And this was a year and a bit before. And who do we know is capable of trawling newspapers from months and years before? I know Zodiac quoted something from 3 years before. So I think it's a possibility, but, not certainly. But
quick question, Rich. Does it have to be from the article or could it be from the Zodiac being an RCC student or being a local and just for being familiar with the local Riverside crime? Obviously, the articles play into that, but you see what I'm saying? A more personal connection, like he knows someone from the school or heard about it.
Yeah, I don't mean he wasn't responsible for the Atwood crime, as you know. It was the guy in jail at the time. But he could have been referencing it just to say that guy wasn't successful.
Finish the job. Yeah, that's I mean, in terms of familiarity, you know what I mean?
The next one won't be so lucky, RH, Riverside Halloween, i.e. me. But that doesn't help us. That doesn't help us in terms of whether it was Zodiac or not.
Yeah, I agree. Lake Herman was a .22 pistol. We obviously think Lake Herman was a .22 pistol because there's nothing to indicate a rifle as far as we know.
Well, how would you shoot somebody behind the ear?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you'd be standing way far away.
Yeah.
But the more interesting thing, Cat Daddy Steve, is it's .22 long rifle, which long rifle is not determinant of a gun. That's just an ammunition. The .22 rounds are actually called .22 LR, meaning long rifle. Now you could still shoot those out of a .22 pistol, but it's just the type of round, which matches for Davis, Swindles, Gaviota Beach, and Lake Herman,
and the Robesons.
The ejected cartridge would be close to that open door if you were holding a rifle, wouldn't it?
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know, but he said, has anybody confirmed if ALA or Donald Lee Cheney own a Browning high-powered 9mm? I mean, Druzer, you probably know more about Allen's guns, but
well, certainly not confirmed. He may have owned something like that 20 years ago when they raided his trailer for the second or third time.
However many years after the Canonicals. And Donald Lee Cheney, I don't know. We don't have Drew anymore, so that'd be a question for him.
Going back to the ammunition question, though, is obviously this is extremely common, if not the most common ammunition to use. What we really want is the ballistics report to see whether they had the same right-hand groove characteristics or something a little more unique that could bind them. I don't think the Robeson crimes were Zodiac. But interestingly, it was 22 rifle with the same groove characteristics that they would later find at Lake Herman Road.
Yeah, I don't know about the groove characteristics, but obviously Molina Rodriguez is 22 and 67. You know what I mean? But yeah, also we know Zodiac changes firearm basically at every canonical. So
yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't give us much in terms of ballistics, but I think I'm going to gentlemen. It's been a great show. Shout out to Richard, Druzer, Jerome. That's my dude. Definitely will bring back some shows on my channel when I get around to it. Just got a little busy time here. So sub me over at Planet X Films. Shout out to everybody who came through in the chat. Great discussions. We'll figure out. Maybe we'll get a panel over on my channel. We'll figure out something soon, boys. But great to hear from you guys.
Yeah, this is great. I love these group things we're doing.
Yeah, this is awesome. Shout out to Jerome for putting these together. Make sure to subscribe to the French Wrecking Crew. Go check out Richard's stuff at zodiacciphers.com, and of course, tons of in-depth analysis of the Riverside correspondence, everything we talked about here. But great show, bros. I'll touch in with you guys soon.
All right, later, fellas.
Bye. So, Richard, it was your first time here on the channel. I really appreciate that you have accepted my invitation to talk about the Zodiac. But if you have the time, we can continue to talk about subject you want to talk.
I'm going to throw the towel in because it's 12:30 here now.
Oh yeah, it's true. You're living in UK, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I know. In Belgium, it's late too. Yeah.
But I appreciate you inviting me on, and I've enjoyed it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, always, and you are always welcome.
Yeah, if you want me on again, I'll pop on.
Oh yeah, for sure. Next week, if we continue to do the same show.
I've got anything on next week. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We can focus on the letter because Ross and Druzer told me that you are really specialist for the letters.
Well, we might actually get round to Dominguez and Edwards then, might we?
Yeah.
Because we never quite got there this time, did we?
No.
Never mind. Okay then, Jerome.
Richard, it was a great pleasure to have you.
And a great pleasure talking to you as well. And I'll catch you soon.
Catch you soon.
All the best then.
All the best.
Bye
Thank
then.
you.
Bye.
So it was again a great show with a great panel. I have a chance, an amazing chance to have this. I will not say these people because they are my friend, but it's great because we can talk and there is no dispute. There is a debate, intelligent debate, and we try to figure out what was happening 60 years ago, 50 years ago. I do the text to poem I was written by poet contemporary of Edgar Allan Poe. I agree. I'm a huge fan of Allan Poe, and it's the kind of stuff you find in his writing. We love you too, guy. We love you too, really. So, um, if it's not already done, please subscribe to Net's channel. This is BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia and whatever from the globe. Uh, Mr. Drew Beeson, the Zodcast, Geraci, Planetex Filmworks. Go on Richard website because he is a website, so zodiaccipher.com. And for Druzer, I don't know if he made other video. It's really on that. We will continue to try to have each week a show to talking about the Zodiac, and like this, we keep you informed. And for something else, and after I stop, I'm sorry if I have no news about Stephen Avery and Brandon Dassey making a murderer, but there is no news. There is nothing new. So I will not do a video to talking about nothing that we have already talked about. Um, it's sad, but it's like this. For now, there is nothing. So nothing new. They are still in prison, and there is no advance in the case. So this is what it is. But we hope that it will be new stuff soon. But we cannot know. We can. So thank you very much. Thank you for the all new subscriber. You are really you are amazing. Really, thank you. It comes from my heart. Thank you. You are excellent. So if you want to subscribe, subscribe. If you don't want, this is not a problem. I don't go in this YouTube thing with please subscribe and hit the bell and put a thumbs up. No, you are free. You do what you want. Okay, I see you next week. I hope so. And if you don't so already, please subscribe like my dude, Mr. Harry, because you was saying. But like I say, it's not important. Take care.